For those of you who join us for the first time, welcome to our virtual meetings. And I just realized it's been almost a year here very soon that we'll continue these meetings. And I think I'm glad 2020 is almost over. We can start a new year. So the public forum is an opportunity for people to sign up and provide testimony to the board about issues of concern about TriMet or about any of the issues on our agenda. And anybody who's listening who wants to testify on the ordinances that we have on our agenda today, please be aware that we will have actual public hearings on each one of those ordinances set up for folks. We have this public forum for a maximum of 45 minutes before we enter our normal business meeting. I try to ask folks to limit their testimony to 3 minutes each. But again, we have 6 people from the Helping Hands Reentry Outreach Center and the Bayou Lakes Center that will make a presentation today. And then we have 1 other so far. So I think we're doing fine for time, but please be cognizant of the time. And I understand that we have a number of members of the Oregon Senate that are going to testify this morning, and I want to get them up right away. So I'm going to call this group up front so that we can get them back to work and prepared for the legislative session starting in another few weeks. So with that, I think we're ready to go. What I'd like to do is ask Alan Evans, the CEO of Helping Hands Reentry Outreach Centers, to introduce himself a little bit more and talk about why you're here. And welcome, by the way.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Good morning, everybody. My name is Alan Evans, and I am the founder and CEO of the Bayou Lakes Hope Center at the Jordan Schnitzer campus. We've been open at this facility now for just under 2 months. We have several clients at our facility. We also want to say thank you for the generous donation to our organization and trying to meet the needs of transportation back and forth to all of the stuff that our clients have to go to. Since we opened our doors, we've reached out to our local businesses, and they've reached out to us for employment opportunities for the clients who live at this facility. 2 is we always knew that we have to have bus line. You guys extended the 11 bus line out. It's wonderful. There's a gap in service in the middle of the day. That's extremely difficult for people to get back and forth, and that's why we're here today. We reached out to our local partnering businesses that employ some of our people, and we found out that this is a common issue, is that opening and that gap in service to get people back and forth to where they need to get. So today we come to you with a request to see if we could fill that up at least Monday through Friday and get the bus lines out here so people have transportation. And so that's a small thing. We've been open out at the facility. We've got 136 beds. We're going to be expanding another 220 beds here in the next few months. We're filling up pretty good. It's wonderful. And if anybody would like a tour, I'd be glad to give you a tour out there. But that's my 3 minutes, Bruce, unless you have something else that you'd like me to talk about.
No, maybe we'll get to the other speakers, then we'll see if anybody has any questions or comments afterwards. But I just want to congratulate you folks for getting that Wapato repurposed and under being open for to help with the homeless problems and providing services to folks. So we're just pleased that we're able to help a bit, and we know we can probably partner up more, and so we look forward to what we can do with you. So I understand. I'm sorry. So what I'd like to do, I understand the next person that they want to call on, I don't see her on my list. Is Senator Betsy Johnson here?
She is trying to get in. I'm working on that.
Okay. Well, can we go to Senator Elizabeth Steiner Hayward?
She has not joined the meeting.
Okay. Well, I do see Senator Lou Frederick. So can we open up Lou Frederick's line?
Hello there. Can you hear me?
Can. Nice to see you too.
It's a couple of steps. This is a different web connection than I'm usually using, so it was a few steps to get in. Listen, thank you. I want to thank you as well for the work you've done with the Bobby Lakes group. It has been remarkable and supportive of the kinds of folks who rarely get support, quite frankly. And so that makes a big difference. The facility is in my district, and so I'm pleased with that. I'm also pleased to see what we're able to get accomplished so far. The people who are out there already are getting support. They're getting to actually take charge of their own lives by way of the center, by way of just the space. It helps with whatever TriMet can do to help them. It will make it even better for them and for others. We will be, as you heard from Alan, we will be expanding here very shortly. We're getting good responses already. We're getting people, getting a couple of companies have already hired folks out there saying, and that makes a difference. They have a place to live, and they have a job, and they know that they're going to have a nice, safe place to live for a while there. That's a huge change for a lot of the folks who are there, and we're getting support. Anything we can do as individuals, but also as institutions like TriMet, will help them, and I think begin to give them confidence that there are things that they can actually get accomplished. So that's just my thing that I wanted to say. There are you mentioned Betsy Johnson and Elizabeth Steiner Hayward. Both senators are involved in this. A lot of other folks are watching it as carefully because we see this as a potential success. It's already being successful, but we think that on a long term it'll be a success. Please help with whatever you can, and that's my best thing there to say. And but I also have to say to my former student Bernie, I understand that you're retiring, which is completely uncalled for. You are younger than me, and you should not be retiring, not being allowed to retire. But you've worked pretty hard to do this, so okay, I guess we'll allow that this time.
Thank you, Senator. You taught me well.
Thank you, Senator Frederick. We really appreciate you being here this morning. Jeff, did any of the other senators get in yet?
Not yet.
Okay. The next one I had then on the list was Dan Madro from Columbia Sportswear. Is he in? Not hearing him.
Yes, he is.
Okay,
Dan,
good.
you're muted, Dan.
There you go. No, we're still muted.
Can you hear me through the phone?
Yes, there we go. We got you now.
Okay, well, we're patching it together here. But yeah, I appreciate you guys listening here. And I'm a senior recruiter with Columbia Sportswear for the Rivergate distribution facility. We employ around, it's dependent on season, but anywhere from 500 to 1,000 employees at the facility. And we, along with Alan, have experienced a lot of the issues with the public transportation, being able to get our employees to work. And then also with that gap in the middle of the day, it does cause an issue and a delay in some workers having to get off their shift and then wait multiple hours before being able to use the TriMet system to ride home. So we're very much in favor of both looking at extending the bus routes, earlier in the mornings as well as through the midday. And a two-piece part of that is both wanting to provide jobs for the TriMet ridership, but then also service the employees that we do have out here that we are able to accommodate with the current TriMet systems in place, and allow a more robust system to be able to get them to and from work in a timely manner. And that's all I had.
So, Mr. Madro, is your facility right outside the gates of the Bybee Lakes Hope Center?
Essentially, yeah. It's probably a quarter mile down the road, but it's off of Ledbetter and Marine Drive.
Yeah, yeah. So my observation would be that number 11 line should have a lot more ridership than it does. And do the employers out there actually understand the line, and or is it just because of limitations that they're not able to utilize it?
I've had the issue for a while as far as not just the actual line itself, but many of our employees, other than a few exceptions in smaller departments, aren't able to utilize the transportation because it does not. For example, one of our shifts gets off at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and the production planning and all that kind of stuff, we can't really flex around some of those finish times. So it makes it impossible for the worker to be able to utilize the line, in the times that they need to utilize it. And then also, as far as earlier morning, or if there's overtime on weekends, there is no service for those times. So those employees, we aren't able to hire those employees out here because of that.
Thank you. Thank you. Jeff, how are we doing on the other senators?
I am sending a call out to Betsy Johnson to see if we can get her just on the phone.
Okay.
That is in process.
Okay. Well, I see Lee Calcagno is here. Do we want to go on to him?
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and do that?
Okay.
How's it going, everyone?
Good morning.
Morning. Yeah, so I'm the staffing coordinator here for the Bybee facility over at for OIA Global, and we're actually just down the road from the Columbia facility as well. Yeah, so we actually experience a lot of the same difficulties. We have had hard times filling positions just because of transportation issues. There's a certain price point that you have to hit with the dollar amount to try to incentivize people who have cars, because that's just generally the more reliable, form of transportation for people to get to work. Relying on public transit is just not something in the cards right now, especially because we've opened up from 1 shift to 2 shifts. So the evening shift, the end of the shift ends around 11 o'clock, which just makes it really hard for people to get home, seeing as how there's not a bus running at that time. During the middle of the day, if we have sick employees that need to go home, that's not really an option. They have to wait around in our facility for a couple hours for a bus to come. It's just not, it's hard. It makes it very hard for us to recruit and to staff properly. We'd like to be able to incentivize better. And part of that package of incentives would just be having better transportation.
Great. Thank you for your testimony this morning. Appreciate it. Any luck there, Jeff?
No, not yet.
Okay. Do you want to, Alan, did you have something else you wanted to add? I'm seeing you raising your hand there.
Yeah, if I may, I've talked to both Betsy and Elizabeth Steiner Hayward, and it was a difficult time to try to get on. I know that Betsy wanted to be on here. We also have a letter from the mayor's office in support of what we're asking today, and I'll make sure that gets sent right over. The mayor was going to attempt to come on, but that did not happen. So I just wanted you guys all to know that.
All right. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Why don't you hang on for just a few minutes? Maybe we'll go. There's one other person that wants to testify this morning, not related to this group, right, Jeff?
That is correct.
Why don't you see if we can get them on, and we'll see if we can get to the senators here right after that.
Okay, so we're going to go to Lee H. Lee, I just unmuted your phone.
Hi, can y'all hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Awesome. My name is Lee Helfand, they, them pronouns. I am with Opal Environmental Justice Oregon and Bus Riders Unite. I would like to speak about several things this morning. First, about Red House on Mississippi in North Portland. I'm not sure how many of you have heard about what's happening up there, but it is an eviction of one of the last Black families in the immediate area. And activists are calling for pushback against the mayor's use of police force. So I think in a broader conversation around policing, it's important to recognize that this is still happening outside of the protests and uprisings that were happening over the summer and continue to this day. So for all the community leaders on the call right now, I would just urge you to either reach out to me personally via chat if you don't know what I'm speaking about and I can give you more information, or to contact other community leaders in the area to immediately put a stop to this eviction notice. I would then quickly like to speak to the appointments process. We know that the appointment process has been delayed. However, we would also like it noted that Bus Riders Unite has been advocating against policing practices under your all purview for quite some time now, and that we believe that appointing or elevating the leadership of former officers, corrections officers, former police of any sort, any relation to the carceral system is not due diligence and justice towards the anti-police violence movements that have been happening. And then speaking on the Reimagining Public Safety Committee, we know a part of that process has ended, but we also know that there is likely to be more committees built out of this process. And we would like to request access for both Opal and Bus Riders Unite to be placed on these committees. We know there's been a contentious relationship at multiple points throughout this process and in the past, and we would like to continue the conversation even when it is most difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony this morning. I do see Senator Betsy Johnson on the screen now. So good morning. If you can hear us, the floor is yours, Senator Johnson.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. And I've been listening on the telephone. Catching the bus anywhere in your system is easier than getting into this meeting. I've listened to all of the testimony. For the record, my name is Betsy Johnson. I proudly represent Senate District 16. I was one of the negotiators that helped pass House Bill 2017 with its expanded transit resources. As Mr. Evans explained, I'm also proudly one of the group trying to reanimate the Bybee Lakes Hope Center as a place of refuge, recovery, and reentry. Chair Warner, you and TriMet have been exceptionally helpful and encouraging up to this point. We are making tremendous progress. Today, I'm here with my colleagues in support of the expanded service at the Bybee Lakes Hope Center. We don't use the W word anymore. For two really important reasons. One is that the naysayers who said that it was going to be impossible to use Bybee Lakes cited the lack of transportation and said that it doomed the use of the Bybee Lakes Hope Center. With your substantial help, we are overcoming, if not having overcome, that obstacle. The second is, as you just heard from the business representatives, these fine Oregon businesses located in the vicinity of Bybee Lakes Hope Center are offering employment to our recovering clients. This is one of the most important steps to recovery and self-sufficiency. Augmented transportation would greatly increase the likelihood of meaningful participation in the workforce. And with your support, the evolving dream of Bybee Lakes Hope Center is becoming a reality. I thank you for your past support. We enthusiastically support augmented service. And thank you for your time and your patience as I struggled with the technology to join you this morning.
Well, so pleased that you're here, and thank you for what you do and thank you for what you're about to do in the next session. I know you're going to be spending a lot of time on a lot of tough issues. So again, we appreciate it. And your support of public transit and the funding measure was really monumental, in my opinion. So congratulations to you and everybody else. I guess I should let you know that Doug Kelsey, the general manager, I've talked about this a little bit. And as I said in my comments earlier, I think that area, there's a lot of employment out there, and it just seems like they should be able to use transit more than they are. So hopefully we can have a dialogue with you folks and with some of the businesses out there to figure out what we might be able to do. It's clear that our resources are stretched right at the moment because of the downward trends in ridership and revenues. But we want you to be successful out there. That's clear. So,
well, I think we're committed, Mr. Chair, to spreading the word. I think there's some public education that needs to occur to let businesses know that there could be augmented service, that their support and ridership is going to be important. I would love to see that whole district become a place of the utilization of transit for work rather than just moving people around in an urban setting. If that could become the demonstration campus for inter-business transfers, the employment opportunities for Bybee Lake. And I think with your help, we would happily undertake an education opportunity to share with the businesses out there how it's in their best interest to utilize the service. And it certainly serves us in order to expand the employment base for our clients. When we are fully built out, and Mr. Evans was sharing with me last night the charitable gift of a whole lot of more resources for the interior of the building. When we are completely built out and have people in recovery, seeking meaningful employment, moving towards self-sufficiency, we're going to be a powerful source of manpower and woman power to supplement the openings at those jobs as they recover, please God, in a post-COVID Oregon. And so I think we have the opportunity to not just serve the businesses, but make a demonstration project that could serve as a model for the rest of the state as we build out the efficacy, efficiency, and economies of the utilization of transit.
Thank you. Thank you. Jeff, was there anybody else that wished to testify before us this morning?
No, that's all I've got.
Okay. Well, Mr. General Manager, before we say goodbye to these folks, or anything else you want to add this morning?
There is. Firstly, I want to thank everybody for just being the champions to help Bybee Lakes. We're here, we're arriving as you've taken the risk and the courage to actually get it open. So, and I want to also acknowledge our President Warner here as well, who's also been affiliated in trying to help advance this cause as well. So we've made some progress, but we need to continue the conversation around what the future could look like and grounded in the pragmatism of our financial and other realities. I had a prior conversation, Mr. Moudreau, with your CEO at Columbia Sportswear. He and I spoke, it was pre-COVID. That's all I know. It was just a big blur prior. So, and he had offered in our conversation to actually work together to actually even start reaching out to the community and even doing surveys and such. So who actually might take it? To have a bus running around that's empty is not a winning formula. It's not going to win long term. So as we all spend taxpayer dollars, and we're all taxpayers too, me too, is how do you do it in a cost-effective way where we can create wins? And I think that in my mind is a North Star for, there's a lot of room for a conversation in here, I think, as to what's possible. For some of you may know, we've already donated a bus to Bybee Lakes and painted it. We're actually allocating our staff there to go inside Bybee Lakes when you're ready to help educate those who maybe have never had the privilege of using transit. So how we can help educate them and create the confidence to use the system of the future. It's a bit to Ms. Johnson, your comment, Senator Johnson, around how do you create a new place, a new mindset, a new outcome. So I think there's there. I don't know what that looks like, but I think we are committed to having that conversation to explore what's possible, but grounded in the pragmatism of our financial challenges right now. So I think so. So stay tuned. Alan, I'm going to assume you're the point person on this. I see a thumb going up. So we will have probably our point person, Tom Mills, who probably doesn't know this yet, but he's now by this is going to be reaching out to you. So, so stay tuned and let's see what's possible. And thank you for your support.
Any of the board members, TriMet board members have any comments or thoughts here before we say goodbye to everybody?
Yes, I do. President Warner. This is Ozzy, and I'm thrilled. I just want to acknowledge, first of all, having this part of the TriMet jurisdiction within the district. I'm always excited when we get to expand services and bring opportunities to meet critical needs in the region. So, first of all, hats off to everybody involved on both sides of this, from TriMet to the senators, to the folks at the Hope Center, Alan and the team that have helped partner to pull this off. I think some of the messages you're hearing today about how we ensure to build on this and communicate to the region out there that there is better service, that we can better learn how to better serve the needs of the workforce out there and the folks that are going to be leveraging all of the services and benefits at the Bybee Lakes Hope Center. I think this is a great opportunity to really do better. So I think it's a fantastic day to celebrate a partnership that's helping meet critical needs in our community, enhance the role of public transit in the region. And in the end, it shows what we can do when we're working together across agencies and between public agencies and community partners to do this work. So hats off to everyone. I'm thrilled to hear that we've got to this point. So thanks for giving the floor, President Warner. I just wanted to share the enthusiasm for this.
Good. Thank you, Ozzy. Appreciate it. I don't see any other hands raised. Was there any other board members want to make a comment or a question? I guess not.
Sorry, I'm not part of the board, but I before we do depart, there's one little piece I would like to mention before us business people leave the meeting. There's a lot of jobs, people losing their jobs throughout the city and the state and everything. One thing I can say is that within our sector, there's a lot of job growth. And my hopes is that with increased channels to be able to get people to our facilities out here along Marine Drive, we can hopefully help offset some of that. I know grocery stores and a lot of retail locations, again, are losing their ability to employ people. So our hopes is that, not only will we increase ridership for people at the Bybee Lakes Hope Center, but as well increase the employment opportunities for people along the Marine Drive stretch as well.
Great. Thank you again. Okay, with that, I'm going to close the public forum. And again, thank you all. You're welcome to listen into the rest of our board meeting if you want, see what we do. But I'm going to move on now, and I'm going to actually call to order the regular business meeting of the TriMet Board of Directors for Wednesday, December 9th, 2020. And moving on to the first items are the board reports. And I'm going to call on Director Bauman to give us a report on the Committee on Accessible Transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Yes, I have the report on the most recent CAT meeting. That was on November 18th. Just want to report on a couple of items that came up at that meeting. One is the committee continues to discuss the accessible parking arrangements at the new park and ride plan for the Gateway Transit Center, and they approved in the end the arrangement of van accessible spaces. There was a report to the CAT from Lieutenant Brett Laser of the Transit Police, and he answered questions, and he assured the CAT members that transit police operations won't be impacted when the Portland Police leave the task force early next year. You may recall I've reported in the past that CAT members have expressed concern about the dangers presented by e-scooters, specifically blocking sidewalk access, blocking bus stop access, etc. Representatives of PBOT at the meeting gave a presentation on the city's second e-scooter pilot program. They said it was a great success from the points of view of equity and safety. They said that in 2019, individuals rented e-scooters more than a million for more than 1 million trips, and 6 companies offered scooters for rent during that period. So that was all positive. Finally, at the meeting, General Manager Doug Kelsey attended and provided an update on a number of issues and answered questions about issues such as mask enforcement and social distancing on transit, both of which are a significant issue of concern for CAP members. And I know that the members appreciated hearing from Doug on those issues. And that is the report.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Director Bauman? I'm seeing none, so thank you very much for your report. I'll move on to the second report, which is the Finance and Audit Committee report. Director Stovall.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning to fellow board members and staff and everybody that's here watching, our riders and stakeholders. So we covered 2 items on the Finance and Audit Committee this morning. The very first item was an update on kind of the budget and performance in comparison to what was kind of outlined and forecasted, and kind of what's going on with the pandemic. We continue to see, of course, as you can imagine, softening of revenues, specifically passenger revenues. We have seen some positives based on some other revenues that we receive that are ahead of what the projections have been based on kind of some of the updated projections based on COVID and the pandemic that's going on. But again, we continue to see some of the challenges that are coming forward, which I believe the board in general will be receiving an update here relatively soon, most likely in January or sometimes within that time frame, that just gives kind of a broader update of what's going on. We actually have seen an improvement as we look forward into the future of roughly about 21 million of where we thought we were going to be. But we're still seeing a pretty significant deficit over the next 5 years, even based on kind of a recovery that's being forecasted and projected starting in the latter part of 2022 for ridership and ridership revenues. So of course, there are continuing ongoing conversations, as everybody is probably attuned to, in regards to federal stimulus that's both targeted at individuals, organizations, both state and local governments. And then also there's a transit component of that. So there's somewhat wait and see, but we also know that we still have a significant deficit over the next 5 years that we have to continue to be concerned about and look at based on the pandemic and based on the projected recovery. The second item we covered was a brief update on kind of the labor update and where the labor negotiations are, and specifically some of the financial impacts of some of the parts of the negotiations that are going on in regards to, again, the current labor negotiations and some timing efforts in regards to being able to get those negotiations through to completion. So those are the 2 major items that we talked, actually the 2 only items we talked about at the Finance and Audit Committee this morning. And I am completely open for any questions, and both President Warner and Director Simmons are both part of the F&A committee and are available to give any updates that I missed or answer any questions.
Good report, Director Stoll. I would add that the general manager, I think, will go over the finance information in a little bit more detail in his general manager's report. So you'll be able to put into perspective the things that Travis just told you. Linda, did you have anything you wanted to add? I guess not. All right.
No.
So any other questions or comments for Travis? Hearing none, then I'll move on to the Metro Policy Advisory Committee, MPAC. Director Way. Good morning.
Yes. Hi, good morning, everyone. So MPAC's meeting today, which is set for this afternoon, is actually canceled. And so we are no longer going to have the last meeting of the year. As I have stated before in a previous board report, MPAC is going through a lot of different reflections, quite frankly, around, the role of the committee, the best way to really highlight the important work and function of a committee like MPAC. So there's a lot of different changes and conversations that are happening. In short, there's still a lot of, I think, preparation for what next year can potentially look like and what our involvement can be. But what I can say is the first meeting of the year next year will include nominating a vice chair from Clackamas County, as well as a second vice chair from Multnomah County. So that will be among the first action items that take place in next year's meeting. So stay tuned. There's a lot happening. Again, with the structure, formation, but I have been really, I think I've enjoyed my time on MPAC this year so far. I really applaud a lot of the Metro staff in particular for moving everything from physical in-person meetings to virtually very seamlessly. So I know a lot of us are having to still adjust with a virtual format. And I'm open to any questions if you have any.
Great, thank you, Director Way. Any questions or comments about impact or other issues with Metro? I'm not seeing any, so thank you very much. Move on then to the Transit Equity Advisory Committee, TEAC, Director Gonzalez.
Thank you very much, President Warner. Can you hear me all right?
We can.
Very good. This very short report this time. We have not had a meeting for December and will not have a meeting for December for TEAC. So the conversations on my last month's report around reimagining public safety and the different sorts of priorities of our community members will be picked up in our January meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Director Gonzalez? Thank you. Let's move on to the last formal report, which is the TriMet Crash Advisory Committee update. Now, is this the first one, Director Simmons?
Yes, President Warner, it is. And thank you fellow board members for giving me the opportunity to update you on this new committee. The TriMet Crash Advisory Committee was established by the legislature in 2019, and it convened its first meeting in May 2020. The 7-member committee identifies and reviews certain crashes in an effort to improve public safety, builds on understanding and awareness of the reasons for crashes, and discusses how to avoid future crashes. For the purpose of this committee, a crash is defined as a collision between a bus, light rail, or commuter rail vehicle operated by TriMet employee in public or TriMet right-of-way involving a person or property. Committee members are appointed by the TriMet general manager for a four-year term and were selected for their diverse backgrounds and expertise. The committee members are myself as the board representative, Scott Kocher, who is an attorney and member of Families of Safe Streets and Oregon Walks, and also serves as the chair of this committee. Chris Strong, who is the Transportation Division Manager and Engineer for the City of Gresham. Hal Hagedorn, the Associate Director for Portland State University Transportation Education Research Center. Jeff Padowski, the Executive Director of the West Side Transportation Allowance, and Peter Coons, the Portland Bureau of Transportation Director of Lights and Signals. There is one vacant position that will be appointed, and that position will be an advocate for elderly persons and persons with disabilities. The Crash Advisory Committee meets only biannually to review crashes they select and can make recommendations to the general manager based on that review. The committee members attended a series of orientation sessions this fall on 12 topics to gain broader understanding of TriMet. I might add, that was 6 hours of orientations over 2 meetings. To understand TriMet, state and federal practices, policies, procedures, and reporting requirements. Orientation topics also included TriMet's agency safety plan and safety management system, incident data collection and safety performance dashboard, drug and alcohol policies, vehicle and right-of-way inspections, public education and outreach related to safety, hours of service, and pedestrian safety and hazard management. Committee members also will be asked to operate the bus simulator and tour the operations command center once they're able to meet in person. What was impressive was the extensive review and reporting, both internal and external, that takes place when there is a crash, regardless of the seriousness, although more extensive external reporting and review takes place when the crash involves fatalities, serious injuries, collisions involving a rail transit vehicle, a runaway train, derailment, or where there is an evacuation for life safety reasons.
Mhm.
Our last meeting was just here in November, or our second meeting, which we reviewed the first series of committee selected crashes. The committee's given a list of crashes, and the committee members decide which ones they want further information and review of. These crashes were selected from a 6-month block of time, and prior to the meeting, the committee members were provided data collected during the post-crash review, including videos, photos, operator and supervisor reports, state and safety oversight findings. The TriMet Crash Advisory Committee will meet again in spring of 2021 to review the second series of crashes. And that concludes my update. Are there any questions?
I'm not hearing any. That was a really good report, and we'll look forward to some of the future reports as this committee continues to get its legs and work under us.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Appreciate it. All right, I've got an item that I'm going to do under the board reports, which is not on the agenda, so please humor me, but it's a resolution dealing with what I consider kind of a bittersweet issue that we were all aware of because following nearly 9 years of service to the board, our organization, the residents of East Multnomah County and the Tri-County region, Director Travis Stovall's tenure as a TriMet board member is coming to a close. He has tendered his resignation effective today. And as you know, he's served 2 full terms on the board, and his second term actually expired in February of this year, and it's been extended because of the COVID and the work that we need to do. But as we also know, Travis will continue to serve the residents of Gresham, where he is the mayor-elect after winning the race to lead Oregon's 4th largest city by 13 votes. Congratulations, Travis. I think Director Edwards called you Landslide, and I think that's a nickname that's going to stick with us for you. Travis, we'd like to formalize our appreciation of your tenure with a resolution in your honor, which I'll read right now, and I see it's up on the screen, so thank you. It's a resolution that's entitled Honoring Travis Stovall. Resolution 20-12-43 of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, honoring Travis Stovall for his service as a member of the TriMet Board of Directors. It goes on to say, whereas the Tri-County Metropolitan Transit District of Oregon, TriMet, and its board of directors wish to honor Travis Stovall for his service on the board, and whereas Travis Stovall has served as a member of the board of directors since February 20th, 2012, serving all people of the TriMet Transit District, and particularly the communities of East Multnomah County and Gresham in his own TriMet District 6. And whereas Travis Stovall has served as the board of directors secretary/treasurer and as its vice president, and has also served on the TriMet Finance and Audit Committee. And whereas Over his long service on TriMet board and a finance and audit committee, Travis was able to employ his entrepreneurial vision and his extensive financial background, experience, and management skills to help guide TriMet's many financial decisions and, frankly, assist TriMet in obtaining and retaining AAA bond rating from all three of the credit ratings. And whereas Travis Stovall has been a consistent advocate for diversity and equity in all matters presented to the TriMet Board of Directors and an effective, powerful leader in promoting TriMet's disadvantaged business enterprise program, and whereas Travis Stovall has demonstrated exemplary leadership in the board's response to issues of systemic racism, including working collaboratively to help reimagine safety and security on a TriMet system. And whereas Travis Stovall has always encouraged his fellow board members and TriMet senior staff management to think strategically, to innovate, and to, quote, go bold, end quote, when envisioning the future of public mobility in the region. And whereas Travis Stovall has now served on the board of directors with great knowledge, professionalism, dedication, distinction, kindness, and good humor, always demonstrating careful consideration of all points of view. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the TriMet Board of Directors and the TriMet staff hereby express their gratitude to Travis Stovall for his generous service, and be it further resolved that a framed copy of this resolution will be presented to Travis Stovall as an expression of our heartfelt respect and appreciation. So what I'd like is somebody to make a motion to approve resolution 20-12-43.
So moved. It would be an honor.
All right. Is there a second? I see Linda has a second. So with that discussion of this, I thought I'd give an opportunity to any of the board members who'd like to make a comment in saying goodbye to our fellow board member, Travis Stovall. Who wants to begin?
I would like to begin, if it's okay.
Right. Please.
I just, I really don't like Travis leaving. He has been a stalwart. He's certainly been an example of leadership and bold leadership. And he's been an example of what we've, I think, tried to express as a board and what we're supposed to be about. I just appreciate his leadership. I hope the city of Gresham appreciates what they have now in a mayor. And I just wish you all the best, Travis. I look forward to seeing you going forward, because I know that Gresham is going to, I've heard about some of the things going on there. And I know that you're the person to clean it up and get it back on track the way the city should be operating. So thank you very much for your service to TriMet, to the citizens of the three counties, as well as your service going forward to the citizens of Gresham. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be next. I'm Linda.
Right.
Bruce?
Yes, please.
Travis, as you know, I have sent a written note of appreciation to you. I've always appreciated the perspective that you bring to the board. There will be somebody on the board that will be able to fill the role, but there won't be anyone with your particular expertise or way of communicating. And I just value the association, value learning from you and listening to your perspective. It broadens my awareness of finance, funding, the organization, and I just want to thank you.
Thank you.
I see Lori has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Travis, I want to just sign on to everything that Linda and Keith said. It's just been an honor to serve with you and really wish you well as mayor of Gresham. I want to say that the people who are going to be really sad about Travis leaving are the auditors, because nobody ever will get as excited about audits as Travis. So that's been awesome, and your willingness to dig into the financial issues is just great. So again, I wish you all the best, Travis.
Thank you.
Agreed. Anyone else?
Happy to jump
I had
in.
my hand up.
Oh, please.
Oh, I had my
Go
hand
ahead.
up, if it was
Please.
okay. Okay, well, Travis, congratulations on becoming Gresham's next mayor. I'll try to keep it brief. You know, I know that you and I at times had varying different perspectives on things, and we even got into some debates that I think on issues that we were both passionate about. But I think the biggest thing that I have learned being on the board so far and serving with you is that we can walk away with respect for one another and respect for each other's perspectives and life experiences and what we bring. So even if we disagreed, even if we, duked it out sometimes over some of these issues, I think we can walk away being collegial and respecting each other. And I hope that this is a lesson that, many other public elected officials can also learn as this political environment just becomes more and more intense and more uncivil. So thank you so much, Travis, and you will definitely be missed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Travis, for your 9 years of service. When I joined the board, what's now turning the corner on 3 years, it was really with a lot of gratitude for walking into an agency that was well received outside in the community. And when I started looking into the organization structurally, it was clear that TriMet has had a pretty strong, solid ground from a financial perspective and from a financial management side. And it's been such a thrill and an honor to be able to serve alongside you, frankly, knowing that you had your sleeves rolled up, you understood that world, you were interested in the fiscal health of the agency, and that you had a set of eyes on it. It's not for anything that it's the auditors that will miss you and the folks from the finance committee that really got to see the thumbprint that you have on the agency. And it's not for nothing, but the effects you had on the agency are going to be helping it for years to come. And we can only hope to maintain that level of enthusiasm and oversight as board members. So you leave literally and figuratively large shoes to fill. And I have literally looked up to you for the last 3 years that I've been serving on the board. And I'm just grateful and honored for Gresham that they have elected you. I know it was a nail biter of a race, and I'm really excited for what's ahead for you and for the city of Gresham. So I'll continue to look up to you from afar.
Thank you.
We got everybody except me. Well, Travis, I guess it's my turn. I want to let you know that it has been my pleasure and my honor to serve with you on the TriMet Board of Directors for almost 9 years now. Travis and I went through the vetting process at the legislature together, and it was fun to learn to just get to know him going through that process. And I want you to know that this board and I will miss your insights, your knowledge, your wisdom that has really helped move this organization forward during your tenure. Kind of along the lines that Linda said, I'm sure that the governor's office is going to provide us with a very competent and gifted individual to fill your position. But please be aware that I believe that nobody will ever really be able to replace you on this board. You're going to be remembered. So, my friend, we all look forward to working with you in your new role as the mayor of the city of Gresham. And as everybody said, they are really lucky to have you. So congratulations. And please let us know anything we can do to help you be successful in your new role. So with that, what I'd like to do is call the question on the motion to approve resolution 20-12-43. Is there any further comments before I do that? Nope. Then all those in favor of the motion to approve resolution 20-12-43, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Did you vote, Travis?
I voted for it.
All right. Very good. Nice to hear that. So Travis, it's your turn, maybe, since you're moving on to talk with us, and I think I want to let the general manager also say a couple words to it. So Travis.
All right. Well, go ahead, Doug.
Okay.
Well, I won't pile on more than's already been said, but I'll tell you a couple things from my perspective, Travis, that I want to congratulate you not only of being the mayor of Gresham, but you're the very first mayor of the new Lake Oswego. and so I say that with humor because that's what you did here. You inserted humor in your character into serious board matters that help advance this agency, help protect the agency, and helped advance this region's conversation. So your balance and acumen of when to push, when to pull, when to defend, when to represent in so many ways, I think for me, of the 5 years that I have been with this agency, that I will miss is your balance of acumen. And I've always had a personal motto in my life that some of my own team knows. It's called serious fun. We have to be very serious responsibilities, but we also have to insert humor and fun and keep calibrating the responsibilities that come with a board member. And I think, to me, you epitomize exactly the serious fun as a board member. So you're going to be missed. And on behalf of all the staff who've worked with you over all the years, even beyond myself, and to the previous general manager, Neil McFarland, if he was here, he would be absolutely piling on with me. So a big hearty thank you, Travis. And as I will say to folks today that when I spoke to Travis about this today, that I said, please, now is not the time to introduce a new resolution around allocating funds specifically for Gresham. Today's not that day. So Travis, thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you. For all the comments. Of course, it's humbling, and it's been an honor to serve the folks of the Metropolitan area, TriMet. It just starts with this idea and concept of service, and I tell people all the time, if there's anything I do good in life, it's due to the good Lord and my parents. If there's anything I do bad that's undesirable, that's my fault. And so truly, I get to be the compilation of a lot of folks' inputs, great leaders over the years. And this board has been one that has just been a joy. We've met our challenges, but because of the strength of the relationships, the strengths of the mutual respect, we've been able to step through those challenges, knowing and being comforted by the fact that those who serve with us shoulder to shoulder are going to be there by our side. And each and every one of you, I've got great respect for. You bring a different perspective, phenomenal comments, thoughts, and ideas that I learn from every single day that we get an opportunity to serve together. And the folks that we've served with before, President Warner, him and I have been, we came on the board together, he referenced, and it's been a joy, an absolute joy serving under his leadership for this organization. He's been a critical part and component of the guidance of that even level hand, steady hand for the board and for the agency over the years. And again, I feel so blessed and honored to have the opportunity to serve with both him and everybody on this board. The diversity on the board has been one that I've just relished in because that not just from a diversity of thought, but also a diversity of ethnicity and race and gender has all been something that has just added to the incredible richness of not just being able to guide this agency and the response that we have around our community, but the richness of just of friendship, of kinship, and the things that I've been able to enjoy being a part of this. And so, with that, I go forward to just hopefully, be able to be a contributor in another role and continue to have a phenomenal relationship with TriMet. And as Doug has already referenced, I will refrain from putting forth any resolutions or anything that says that we'll allocate additional funds to Gresham. Although it's the constraint is and restraint is going to be difficult because, as we know, we already face a bit of a budget challenge there, as we do here in every place else. But I just can't thank you enough. I'm just a simple boy from Kansas, and the opportunity to serve with incredible folks and leaders like everybody on the board and our staff has just been, again, like I said, an honor and a joy that I will never forget. And again, I take some of the phenomenal things that I've learned here with me as we go forth and work with, and again, another capacity within our community. So thank you for all the kind words, and thank you again for giving me the opportunity to serve with you.
Our pleasure. All right, let's move on then to the general manager's report. Mr. Kelsey.
Well, thank you, Mr. Board President and members of the board. After that, mine is a lot less important. So, but I'll do my best here. We've got a number of items today. One of which you've already talked about is the Finance and Audit. We'll give you a full briefing on the financial picture from Nancy and Dee here. First, I do want to continue keeping at the forefront here the challenges with COVID and the successes with COVID. I do want to acknowledge right now, and I think we're all well aware, as this agency is going through, the world is going through, the significant surge that's underway right now. That's across the region, and our thoughts and prayers continue with our own employees as well as their family members and our customers as well. It really has taken a toll on all of us with, frankly, I think we all know of somebody who's probably been touched by this now, and it continues. So we're not immune. We're doing everything we can inside the agency to slow the spread of this. We've even come up with new ways to intensify our cleaning and our safety protocols. Specifically, one example is we've just added a new tool to our toolkit. It's referred to as an electrostatic sprayer, and who would have thought we'd be talking about that at a board meeting, but here we are. But what it is we've purchased 28 of them that we're using on our buses and trains. They're a backpack sprayer, and not only is it a cleaner, but the cleaning solution actually is electrostatically charged, which actually helps with the cleaning it coats the surface way more thoroughly, and frankly allows us to be a lot more productive. So that's an example of, as Travis has always pushed us all on, myself included, is on innovation, is an example where we keep working on tools and techniques to help reinvent ourselves even during the crisis of this game. So this is just the latest one, and seems to be working out really well. So we've also just let people know that all our daily services has the bus barriers on them now. We did have, I think I'd mentioned, our spare ratio, which is kind of offline. Our smaller buses, we had supplier problems and we had these temporary barriers up. We're in the final stages of installations of those. So by this time at the next board meeting, literally the whole fleet will be done with all the bus barriers, even including our spares, which is great, not only for COVID and the transmission as a secondary benefit, but also from an operator assault perspective. So this will serve us, let's use the crisis to help us for the future. So I think this will serve operator assaults as well as this and COVID 2021, whatever comes our way. So I think it's a really sound investment for the protection of our employees for the future. And also just a reminder for those who are actually out using the system, and it may seem odd, we've actually, as part of the OHA recommendations, we have our front windows open on the to help to move the air through on the buses. So as we're getting to that cooler weather right now, we'll have the heat turned up, but we still want to have the windows open. So it just helps with air circulation on the system. So just a reminder for any and all who use the system. That's why we're doing it. It's really for making sure we optimize the health profile of our buses while we can. So all our daily services has the bus barriers on them now. We did have, I think I'd mentioned, our spare ratio, which is kind of offline. Our smaller buses, we had supplier problems and we had these temporary barriers up. We're in the final stages of installations of those. So by this time at the next board meeting, literally the whole fleet will be done with all the bus barriers, even including our spares, which is great, not only for COVID and the transmission as a secondary benefit, but also from an operator assault perspective. So this is just the latest one, and seems to be working out really well. So we're also on the safety side of things, just making sure for even the board members use your ice grips, by the way, because we're getting to that colder weather. Just as a safety side, if any of the board members need them, we'll get them for you. Just put them on if you're those times of ice and snow where we don't want anybody slip or sliding around here as we get into the colder weather coming on us. Specific to ridership, for November, we provided about 3 million trips, just over 3 million trips in November. Again, as you had heard at Finance and Audit Committee, you'll see some in the numbers here, we're down just under 61% in our ridership, so 40% is our base from November compared to 2019. Specifically, bus saw a 59% decrease in weekly ridership, excuse me, and Max was down about 63%, with West down nearly 78%, and that's been pretty consistent through the piece. We are seeing less of a drop-off in off-peak versus peak hours slightly, and we are seeing this in a lot of other parts of the country where people are down in the ridership even 70-80% in some cases. So this continues, particularly with the lockdown, the double downing now of don't travel unless you absolutely have to from the governor's order. That is going to continue for a number of weeks. We need to be safe and do it right. So I anticipate that this will continue for a period of time before we can hopefully, with the great news is what's encouraging is the vaccine. There is a light in the tunnel. I don't know how far away that light is, but I think it's we are on the list of a second tier currently of our employees, our essential employees receiving the vaccine as it materializes out. So I think the intention is that to be those in immediate health need and elderly, emergency responders, and nurses, of course, and doctors, the medical profession, and then we're in that second tier, I think somewhere at the top. So I think that's still being moved around a bit, but we're very much on the radar screen. So I just want to let you know I'm working, and I've asked for an update from my team around once our time does come, what is our specific implementation plan? So we've got to be ready. Who's going where, when, and how? So just to let the board know that that work is underway right now for the next phase that will be coming our way. So, but encouraging news, but we have some challenging few months ahead. But this is all about getting ready for it around February or hopefully sooner if we can. So next item up I've got is financial update for those who were at the Finance and Audit Committee today, as President Warner and Director Stovall had spoken about. I'm now going to turn it over. Now, Dee was not at Finance and Audit Committee. She was on a call with Lloyd's of London here today and some other related business. Nancy did a really great job at Finance and Audit Committee with her, but I am going to turn it over to Dee, and I don't know how you want to manage this to give a financial update to the full board and to the public at large. So Dee, over to you.
Thank you, Doug. Sorry I was not able to make it to the FNA, but Nancy is well prepared and she is planning to do the presentation to the board as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Nancy now.
Great, thank you, Dee and Doug. Jeff has given me the ability to share, so give me just a second here while I share my screen with you. There we go. Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. This is an update to our financial outlook for the end of fiscal 2021 and beyond. The TriMet payroll taxes are looking better at just over 5% than what was budgeted, but still down from the prior year by 5%. So this is a little bit of an improvement from our presentation that we made to you in September. Passenger revenue, of course, is a direct reflection of our ridership levels and is down just over 31% from our budgeted amount and almost 61% from the prior year. As part of the response to the pandemic, TriMet, like other transit entities, stopped accepting cash on the system. Cash payments have been reinstated, and we anticipate seeing an uptick in the passenger revenues going forward, but of course that may be dependent on the stay-at-home orders as we go forward. This is a slight improvement from our presentation in September, but still under the budgeted amount for fiscal year 2021. Our federal formula funding, as previously presented to you, is that TriMet will not be penalized in our formula funding due to a drop in ridership. Federal formula funding generally provides approximately $63 million in any given year. Our forecast is that the federal formula funding will be flat in fiscal year 2022, but growing slightly, about 2% or $1.3 million per year thereafter. TriMet has drawn down the entire $185 million or just under that of CARES Act funding as of mid-October. And while we're hoping for additional stimulus funding, we have not included any additional federal funding in the forecast. The STIF funding is coming in better than projected. Any amounts received over the 13 million that we are still waiting for in fiscal 21 will be put into a restricted account until the STIF plan for the fiscal year 22 and 23 has been approved. There's no change to our service that we presented to you from September. We continue to evaluate the service needs and the restoration going forward. Our current projections show service coming back to pre-COVID levels mid-year 2024. This is not intended to be a projection of ridership returning, which is forecasted to return to pre-COVID sometime in fiscal 2027. Our fixed route ridership continues around 39% of where we were at 1 year ago, or we're down 61%. While our ridership started a modest return in May, continuing all the way through August, September brought a slight decline due to the fires. And while October was up just a little bit, that had to do with our Still Bridge restoration and the bridging that we did. And then we took a slight dip in November again due to the new stay-at-home and social distancing requirements. Ridership is projected to increase upwards towards 50% of our pre-COVID levels by the end of calendar year 2021, with projection of a 100% return by fiscal year 2027. Our operating expenses is a definite positive change. We are almost 18% under budget, and this is a notable accomplishment, given that TriMet hired 130 cleaners, which caused us to actually increase our operating expenditure budget over the prior year, and that was after making numerous operating cuts. The departments are making a conservative effort to reduce their spending through deferrals and just the pace at which they're spending. So at a high level, those cost-cutting measures continue with hiring, hiring freezes, wage freezes, reductions in our day-to-day operating costs, and deferring of some costs. In addition, some of our utilities and diesel fuels are running at less than projected. Our financial modeling assumptions, our ridership is anticipated to slowly return to those pre-COVID levels by mid-fiscal year 2027. The anticipated fare increase has been moved out 1 year, starting in fiscal 2023, and then every other year thereafter. The Division Transit project is forecasted at just over 2,200 weekly vehicle hours, starting approximately September of 2022. The Red Line project is anticipated to start in fiscal year 2024, but is dependent upon the federal appropriation of funding. MAX service restoration is planned through fiscal year 2024, and bus restoration or preservation continues over the next few years. Bus should experience full service restoration by the end of fiscal year 2024, and again, ridership by the end of fiscal 2027. Some of our assumptions, while there's no change to this, I do want to comment on a couple items. We have not anticipated any additional federal funding, such as the CARES Act, within our current financial forecast model. Debt is remaining at the 7.5% of continuing revenues. This is a factor that we're looking at very closely as a result of the loss of our continuing revenues. Our month's operating reserves, we are planning to have a higher months operating reserves when we end fiscal 21 and 22 to address shortfalls in funding in the fiscal year 2023 through fiscal year 2027 time period. For our materials and services, we have no automatic increase across the board for those line items where we have direct control. Our general fund capital investments are projected at $18.5 million for fiscal year 2022 and $10 million thereafter. The emphasis here is that this is for our general fund contribution. While not sufficient to cover all of TriMet's needs, the funding is at a level which addresses mission critical and safety priorities. The acquisition or construction of major capital assets, of course, can be paid for with bond funds. And in addition, our forecast does not reflect projects that would be paid for with external funding. Personnel services will be maintained at the existing fiscal year 2021 levels through fiscal year 2022, but then increasing thereafter through fiscal year 2027. And then our pension contributions remain as previously approved by the board at $5.5 million for the management plan and $25 million for the union plan. Some of our cost-cutting efforts since the pandemic began, of course, includes those reduced services within all of our modes of transportation. We've also paused on service expansion, and we are continuing to maintain reliability, but we have adjusted for capacity, taking into consideration social distancing requirements. We continue with our hiring and wage freezes. We are limiting the number of new positions going forward into fiscal 2022. We are evaluating existing vacant positions to see if those duties and responsibilities can be spread to other employees. Of course, we've limited our travel and taken advantage of online training where available. And as mentioned earlier, all the divisions have made a conservative effort to watch their expenses and defer or reduce those expenses since the beginning of the fiscal year. In addition, we've deferred or descoped some capital projects where possible. So what does this all mean to the bottom line? Well, when we met with you in September, our shortfall for the next 5 years was $133 million. And as of the end of October, we've been able to reduce that down to $106 million. The October forecast is $27 million better than that September forecast. In fiscal 2023, we will be utilizing available STIF funding for service preservation, but it will likely not be enough to cover all service. While the CARES Act funding helped us get through fiscal year 2021 and balance into fiscal 2022, it also is enabling us to push fund balance forward past fiscal year 2022 to help offset the deficit in fiscal year 2023. Some of the other updates include that our payroll tax information, we have implemented a more immediate growth, but slower growth long-term. While it's still not meeting our pre-COVID projections, we expect a permanent loss of approximately $10.2 million due to business closures, layoffs, workforce reductions, and pay cuts. And again, our fiscal 21 and 22 ending fund balance will have increased to help us address some of those shortfalls in fiscal 2023. But at the end of fiscal 2023, fund balance is forecasted to be back at the 2.25 months operating reserves in each year thereafter. So clearly we're going to need additional revenues or expense reductions needed past fiscal 2022 through fiscal year 2027. The good news is that we have at our disposal some levers that can be pulled. We will be continuing to evaluate service levels, fare increases, further reducing our day-to-day operating expenses and general fund-backed capital investments. We'll also look at personnel decisions such as wage freezes, hiring freezes, layoffs, which all contribute to cost-cutting efforts. So I'd like to just go ahead and pause right now and turn it back to Doug to see if he wanted to provide any additional comments and then open it up for questions.
Yeah, no, thanks, Nancy. And this is it's always easy to expand. It's always challenging to manage the cost side of things. I will mention that at Finance and Audit Committee, we did have a discussion around, the role of the federal government and how that may fit into this, particularly with the President-elect Biden administration. So that is something that we aren't banking on. Once the CARES Act runs out, we're on our own, but we believe that some of the other larger transit agencies, i.e. New York, Chicago, Atlanta's have come to mind off the top, are probably going to be they are in fact a lot more difficult financial strait than what this agency is, thanks to this board's stewardship of great finances over the years. We are in far better shape than many of them. Some of them, in fact, have cut routes back by not cutting them back, but they've cut out 40% of the routes right now in service. So they are going to be hitting this wall quickly. I think we have levers at our disposal, as Nancy has reflected. So I think there will be a place for the federal government, but we can't bank on it as we look to manage these assumptions at this point in time. So with that, we'll pause here and see if there's any questions any of the board members may have.
So board members, feel free to speak up or raise your hand.
Yes, I had a question on our operating reserves at 2.25 months. What has been our typical operating reserves?
So we originally had a 2.5 months operating reserves, and that was a hard number. And about 2 years ago, we submitted to the board of directors for a change in that to have an approved range from 2 to 2.5% months operating reserves. So we're holding at that 2.25. We feel that there's more risk if you drop it down to that just 2 months operating reserves. That's where we're holding constant. But again, in fiscal 21 and 22, we are planning an increased ending fund balance to help with the deficits that you see in fiscal year 2023.
I would also add to that the reserve balance is part of our adopted strategic financial plan guidelines. And it was previously said, as Nancy said, at 2.5 weeks. It's not enough, months. It's not going to be enough to solve problems, but it does at least give us a soft landing while we figure out what to do next.
Thank you.
Kathy, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to just ask around some of the different positions that might be, temporarily suspended just due to the budget outlook. So perhaps this might be a question for Doug or anyone else, but can you tell me a little bit more about what those positions are that we had anticipated filling or hiring? And then the second piece to that is around the 130 or so, I think was the number that Nancy had said about the cleaning staff, and what our, what is our plan to retain that sort of, that workforce that I feel like still in the midst of this resurgence or second wave of COVID, we still, I imagine, would need around that many people, or maybe even more, to do the essential work.
Maybe I can tackle this one, and maybe I'll start with your last point first, Director Way. To the cleaners, this is something I intend to fiercely protect, particularly while we're going through COVID. If we don't have cleanliness and safety, then no matter how hard we try, people aren't going to be coming. So this gets to the fundamental fabric of confidence and trust to come back to the system when it comes. So particularly through COVID, in a post-COVID world, whenever that looks like, if we take the vaccine at its word and it plays out this time next year that we're back to even a day without masks, that'd be wonderful. So we'll evaluate that in a separate viewpoint. The goal is to keep the system clean. Will we apply it? We'll keep some of the technologies for sure, because it makes sense, like the electrostatic. It's productive, it's cost efficient, it's safe. We'll use the foggers, for example. So this crisis will leave us a residue, if you will, of some benefit, despite the huge problems. So they will benefit all of us for higher standards at 99.9% every day. Every bus will be going out with them being fogged, as an example, or those electrostatic. So the number of bodies related to it, or individuals, that will have to be evaluated based on our financial circumstance, but at least keeping it to an appropriate level. What that is, I think we still have to play that out. So to some of the other positions. So, for example, as it relates to service, so we cut back service to 80%. So when the intention of CARES Act was to not lay people off, and we have done that to the T. We've not laid anyone off at this point in time. But as the CARES Act runs out, unless there's another CARES Act 2, CARES Act 3, whatever it might be termed, then we're on our own. And so right now we'd reduced service down to 80%. We still kept people employed. Then we went back up to 90% on referencing the bus service back in September. So we will have to at some point adjust the demand down to our affordability to essential service levels if there's not new revenues. With that would come bus operators and the relation of the associated work that is directly related to putting a bus out on service. That's on one part of it. There's other parts which right now we're looking at not replacing jobs, which is part of your question. So jobs that we are replacing, for example, if we have someone in the control room who leaves, I have to replace that. And I authorize that right away because that's part of just running the service and running it safely. We will not compromise positions that are directly related to running a safe system. That was back to those 4 variable corner posts. That is not up for play in my mind. There are staff positions. For example, I'll give you one that I have not approved. It's an analyst in our transportation group. And so those who have staff roles, we're going to have to reevaluate. How do we synergize jobs? How do we reevaluate? How do we tighten the ship up, but still being able to provide our services? So we may even pull back on some of the discretionary projects we had wanted to advance that have long lead times. So I'm looking at capital right now, for example, that have multi-year impacts. So just by approving it today may have 4 or 5 years of economic impact related to them. So we're going to be tightening up the capital side of our projects list at this point in time. Because it's not only the people that come with it, or it's the equipment, it's the cost of infrastructure as well. So we're looking at sort of all shapes and sizes between fixed to deliver service to the variable costs of staff versus line, I'll call it, which is types of positions.
Thank you, Doug. I think my only comment and response to what you just shared would be, I think trying to protect as much as we reasonably can with our financial outlook. The cleaners, the essential people, really folks on the front lines, or bus drivers, with as much benefit to their health as we can possible, because these folks on an ongoing basis are getting exposed day in and day out to COVID, quite frankly, and we just know from public health data that this situation is going to become a lot worse. The infection rates are going to become a lot worse by the end of, by around Christmas, actually, is what they're projecting. So I just really wanted to make sure that I state that the importance of, again, protecting those on the front lines. And I know that the state, I just heard the other day, has said if folks are exposed to COVID and they tested positive, they can also take advantage of a 2-week, I think it's called a COVID pay. So I just wanted to, again, state that when we're talking about equity and public safety, the safety, the bodies, the health of the actual people that do the work for us on the front lines every day, I think is central to the work that we're going to do.
Yeah, no, thank you, Director Way, for that, because I think you're quite right. So as an example where we have not cut back, in fact, we've invested more, we've actually put an extended leave policy in place directly related to COVID to actually help people even beyond knowing the uniqueness of these times. So we've actually invested more than we have under a non-COVID time to help, because we know those things are real and they do exist. So so I think those will continue as long as COVID's going to continue, for sure. So I totally agree, and and we also are seeing this. We've got numbers now of over 50 employees who have been impacted at varying stages. Some are back, some aren't, and some have picked it up from other sources, clearly beyond TriMet. And that we're managing all those issues, because if people don't have their health, the rest of this doesn't matter. And it's not just our frontline workers, which for sure have a high touch point to the public and others, but we have these in our offices and our mechanics and others that are doing really important work. So this ghost of a virus has no place. It stops. And so it's front, back, sideways. It's in every direction possible. As I'm saying this, I'm thinking of one individual right now who's is off with COVID in one of our leadership roles. So it touches everywhere. So so yes, I totally agree with you. We won't be cutting that back as long as COVID is existing.
All right. Director Bauman.
Yes, thank you. If I recall correctly, I want to ask a question about capital projects that are being impacted. If I recall correctly, there's some projects associated with the formerly planned expansion that have been paused, and that includes the additional bus garages and so on. But can you talk about any other capital projects that are being paused because of these budget constraints?
Sure. Some is for budget constraints, and I'll add on because I think you actually triggered me to this, Director Bowman, is some is also because demand now is down, and it's going to take longer for demand. So we want to protect capital and thus cash preciously. So the Columbia bus base I'll use as a great example where it's a great purchase for us. It's still, we're actually using a small part of it for logistics and materials management. But some of the rest of it, because the speed of us expanding the services slowed down, we are going to slow down the capital program related to actually redoing that whole bus facility. So that's one example that's would typically be around a $160 million project that may now be down to something far less substantial. That's one example. Another example is that we have a railway switch over by Holiday Rose Quarter area that is ready for replacement, or a piece of track. Its time is up, and so as opposed to putting in an enhanced, not only replacing the track, which we're going to do, it will go through the budget process. We're not going to put any extra fancy bells and whistles or extra switch outs on it. So we're just going to say just replace the straight track, kind of replace essentially what's there. Versus if you had a chance to improve some things, you may pull back on the extras, and that's what those are a couple examples.
The refurbishment of the older Max cars, is that still going forward?
Yes, yeah. So I'll maybe divide that into two parts. The replacement vehicles that we call the Type 6s, it's about $150 million in capital. That order's out there, that manufactured, that is arriving. That'll be arriving in a normal, orderly process. In fact, we're continuing with the Ruby Junction, which is where these cars will come to. We're going through, as the board has approved recently, some upgrades to those facilities because we have to get ready to receive those. The other part is the maintenance of rehabilitating some of our Type 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s over the next number of years. That will continue and is under, that will go under review though. The first core over the next few years will for sure continue. We may look at the speed of some of those down the road a bit, depending on financial circumstance. But the main core for the next few years will continue.
Thank you.
Yep. So these are live examples. Yeah, these are great questions. These are live examples of trade-offs and choices, right? About and to managing like our homes, living within our means.
I guess related to that, when you say that, I had the impression that Type 6 vehicles were maybe tied to the Southwest Corridor, but that's not right.
Well, they are in terms of an option if we want to extend the option, but the core purchase is really the Type 6s we're bringing in now are replacing the Type 1s that just break down all the time and we can't even get technological parts, etc. So the core order of the primary order of the Type 6s are replacing the Type 1s, plus if a few extras we would purchase, assuming it would be part of the Red Line expansion, which we are still continuing to pursue to get out to Fairplex.
That project is a bond-funded project, so we have proceeds on deposit to pay for that. Another example of a project that was affected is that we have put a pause on our bus replacements. That frees up some bond proceeds for us to use on other projects that are bond eligible that previously we may have had general fund dollars on. So we're trying to manage it as strategically as we can.
Yep. So a few years ago, that's to Dee's point, the average age of the bus is around 15 years or so. We had some buses up as around 19, 20 years from just coming out of the last recession. Our average age of the fleet now, because we've been modernizing quietly in a real positive way, is just over 8 years. So we've got a real modern fleet, except for probably the back end numbers of the buses. So we're going to continue to watch that. And another area of capital that we're looking at is actually reducing what we call our spare ratio. There's the buses you need every day, and there's the buses that are needed to go in and trains as well for maintenance. So instead of having a 20% range of a spare ratio, we're going to look to drop that down to around around the 15% mark over time, which will save capital.
All right, I see no other hands raised right at the moment. I just remind the board that this is a report that we'll get on a regular basis, and because we wanted it, because it's important to see, and obviously things have changed. You can see in just a couple months' time. So Nancy, Dee, Doug, good report. We look forward to the next one to keep us posted on how we're doing here as all of this COVID and decline in revenues and ridership goes on. So thanks for helping us out there. But Doug, back to you on your board report.
Okay, thank you. Unless there's feedback otherwise, the next time, unless there's a substantial item that comes forward as intending to bring an update such as like this back to you in February's board meeting, unless the board felt otherwise needed.
Sounds good.
The next one up is just Ellen Lato is going to come in, and I know we spent a fair amount of time on the business plan back in the September board retreat. Just going to maybe Alan, just for a quick highlight, just for time's sake here, just to give an update on the next steps and where we are in the development of the business plan cycle. I don't know if we can hear you there, Alan.
That's a good report. Very short.
That's the best one of the day. Are you there, Ellen?
Sorry, I was double muted. I didn't want you to hear anything else, but apparently now you can't hear the important part.
We're good.
Thank you very much. I will be as brief as I can. Jeff, I'm not seeing the ability to share, so if you can give me that, or if you could pull up the materials, that would be great. I will just start talking in the meantime. There it is. Great. What I want to do here, obviously, is give you a quick reminder on our process for sorry, it's sharing the wrong screen. My apologies. On the process for the business plan. As you remember, we bring a business plan to you in March each year that informs then the draft business plan, or excuse me, budget. And in order to do that, we need a draft of the business plan in January. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that we have the right priorities identified and the right strategic approach in this time frame. So during the earlier session with you all, we reviewed the strategic priorities and points of emphasis. And I just want to come back and touch on these very briefly to make sure there aren't additional comments, and that you see that we've reflected the conversation that we've had with you all to date. I also want to reiterate that we will have that draft business plan for your review starting in January. At the same time, that business plan goes out to the public and to all TriMet employees for review and comment. That comment period lasts until March 1st, and then we're able to incorporate any comments that we get in the final. So just to very briefly touch on the strategic priorities, points of emphasis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges, and the premises that I'm going to touch on are all at the beginning of our business plan, and they kind of set the stage for that. So again, not to belabor this, but just get the very, very high overview, and then happy to take any comments. But with the strategic priorities, where we consistently build a culture of safety and incorporate equity in our decision-making activities, we have some priorities that we've identified in the 4 different categories of customers, internal business practices, people and innovation, and financial. And hopefully you can see my little pointer here. Enhancing ridership, obviously an issue with the depressed demand right now, and as we're recovering from COVID, looking to build back and grow upon that. Enhancing the customer experience, a critical part of supporting that, and enhancing access to transit, a critical part of long-term ridership growth and expansion of mobility options for people across the region, regardless of what their mobility choices are. System safety and security, including the reimagining process and implementing that. Optimizing internal processes and systems, something that we need to do all the time. Our training strategy, which really supports that. And then on the financial side, maintaining our current system so that we maintain a state of good repair, increasing available funding where we can, and managing our system and our fleet to increase ridership to support that. That's the overall set of strategic priorities. Moving on to the points of emphasis that we really dug deep in with you all during the last, not the most recent strategy session, but the previous, the points of emphasis specifically for FY 2022. Ridership and recovery strategies, of course, very key for where we are right now. Reimagine safety and security, as we've already talked about, but absolutely core to what we're doing in terms of comfort and safety on board for all of our riders, and being welcoming to all of our customers. Added value to customers across the region, implementing the IT strategic plan, which is very much in the back of the house, but very important for making everything work, including our customer information, our HOP system, all of that. Enhancing equity for employees. This is something that came up in our previous conversation with you specifically about the business plan. Making sure that we are continuing to implement those recommendations from the Employment Diversity Report and striving for diversity within our agency so that we can better reflect our community and the needs of everybody in our community. Resource management, financial resiliency, absolutely critical, since you just saw in that budget report. And then the capital program, still moving ahead with those things that make sense, recognizing that we did get the results back on the Get Moving 2020 ballot and adjusting based on that. I'm going to pause for a moment just to make sure there aren't any comments on that, and then I'll go ahead to, or any questions, and then I'll go ahead through the rest of it.
I'm hearing none. Keep going, Alan.
I just wanted to acknowledge, thank you, Alan. This is Ozzy. I just wanted to thank you. That's a great overview. I really appreciate you taking our comments to heart and presenting in this format. It's really nice to see it all laid out this way.
Terrific. Thank you.
I think, did Director Edwards have a comment?
Yes, I did. I wanted to go back to the enhanced equity for the employees, and I'd like to get a little bit more detail as to what that looks like, what kind of timetable we're talking about for that training that's going to be implemented.
Yeah, Doug, I wonder if that's something that we should come back on. I'm not the expert on this. I could give a very high level, but we'd probably miss important details.
Yeah, I think that's something. I think we're still flushing that out, Director Edwards. Once we agreed on the capstone ones, then we're going to populate that in the draft business plan around actual timeframes. But say bias training, things of that nature, for sure are part of this fiscal year that we're actually in right now. Let alone this is for next fiscal year and beyond. So we've got a lot of things already underway or being developed right now for this fiscal year. We can get back to you for sure if you'd like on some of the specifics, at least where we are, if that's of interest.
Yes, it is. I just get concerned because with COVID piled on top of those particular issues, I get concerned about the well-being and the productivity. Because studies have shown that when there is a enhanced diversity and inclusion program, along with addressing implicit biases and the microaggressions, that the well-being goes up, the productivity goes up, the overall perception of a public entity as well. as perceived by the customer base and business partners will go up also. And that's a major concern, as well as the well-being of course, of the environment there at TriMet. And like you had mentioned before, General Manager, that the health and safety has to come first before we can get back to a place where the our customer base is confident, so they can come back and be supportive and start utilizing the services that we offer. And that same holds true, I think, with our environment at TriMet, because, like I say, with the COVID piled on top of this, it just puts an added burden on addressing this in an efficient manner and as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think in fact, not violating privacy in any way, this is actually scheduled. We've actually been doing a strategic review of training fundamentally in the organization. And so this was actually scheduled. I think Sam Sue and team were scheduled to present that to me last week. Unfortunately, one of those teammates actually has COVID. So we've had to defer it until such time as they're able to come back. So I said, it's probably going to be, before they get back to me, I suspect, it's going to be late this calendar year or early in January. So I think I wouldn't mind seeing it first, and then maybe from that, then maybe we could follow up with you if you're comfortable.
Yes, I'm comfortable with that. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. We'll keep moving along, Ellen, if we could.
Yeah, thank you for those very important points, Board Member Edwards, though. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and constraints. We've talked about these some. Obviously, there are elements related to COVID-19 challenges and economic downturn that are now reflected that were not in the past. And excuse me, recognizing where we are now and some of the challenges that continue as well. And then finally, the premises, the basic assumptions that underlie this, again, reflecting budget realities and the projections, the economic projections from the state of Oregon that we're reflecting, you heard in the budget briefing that you just got, but also having added from our last conversation, for example, the urgent need to address systemic racism and equity needs, both within our agency and in the agency, and in the region as a whole with regards to our service and investments. So that's the general overview. I don't want to go too far into details unless you want me to drill into anything. But with that, I would just remind you that we are, as I said, coming back to you in January with a draft business plan, which you will be able to take a look at, provide any comments you want at any level. And we are taking the information that you've already given us, the strategic thoughts and direction that you've already given that to us, and incorporating that in the draft, which we're developing between now and that time in January, at which time it will be available for comment by all. And that will be the FY22 through 26. So it's all, as always, it's a 5-year look ahead, and it will be starting July 1st of 2021, which is the same time that the budget that you will be considering soon after that will cover. That first year anyway. With that, I will stop and see if there are any further questions or comments.
Alan,
There's Kathy.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yes, I do have just kind of 2 questions. One is just, how are we using existing ongoing public health information and data from OHA, from all 3 of the counties that we serve, to make these decisions around our strategic priorities? Because I feel like that is definitely, and I'm using my public health background now, so I think everything that we have to do moving forward, and I know that we have been incorporating this, but on a high level as a board member, I'm not really seeing the connection between, we're making our decision on, for example, social distancing between the mechanics, right? The 6 feet apart and the wearing of the masks and all that. In other words, how can we have a statement that's built into this future business plan around some of this public health metrics and the data and some of the research to just better inform how we can, how we can really look at our operations and look at customer service and all these different areas. Because I think the science is important to also look at, right, the transmission of this virus and how it's going to continue to impact our efforts. And so just also related to that, I don't know if we're also, involved in some of the different meetings or task force with public health officials around particularly, how the transit system, public transit system is being impacted by COVID. If we are showing up to those meetings.
So maybe I can talk to this one. So we are deeply connected in with the OHA on a daily basis, including I'm doing town halls. I think the board's aware of this every 2 weeks myself, and we bring in different topics and speakers. One of them, we actually had Dr. Vines here, and we're scheduled to have her come again in January. And we're going to be, so we are following, as you said, the science, and we have all the way along. Even back in May, when the governor came out with her orders, the last round of orders, May 14th, if I remembered, I had a 1-hour meeting directly with the governor, talking about specifically line by line, and the head of OHA was actually part of that meeting I had with them. So we are deeply connected all the way up to the governor's level as needed. And our safety security team is daily connected in with OHA. We even have people literally every day. What questions do you have that helps them? For example, the one coming in January, the first one in January, I'm scheduling my town hall, will include what we think our rollout plan will be when transit's time comes up for vaccines. Then after that, the latter 2 weeks after that in January, the tentative plan is, and Dr. Brown, I think, is accepted. She's actually going to come and be part of the town hall to answer any questions around how am I going to feel? What is it? What are the side effects? So we are probably as deeply connected as you can, and all of our decisions have all been based on science, including 3-foot distancing, 6-foot distancing. We follow WHO, et cetera. So, and we ask them areas where, if we even run ideas by them. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And so they've been an outstanding partner, I've got to tell you. And they deserve a lot of credit to helping us, frankly, with the exceptionally low case transmissions that we've actually had.
Yeah, no, I think that's all excellent, Doug. I think, the second part of what I was alluding to is how do we see that in a living document, right? I mean, it's great that you're saying we're doing all of this, we're doing science, we're, hopefully evidence-based research around transit and safety. But if safety is one of the values that we have clearly bolded and emphasized in the, first couple pages of our business plan, then I would like to see us better articulate that in words, in a half a page or in a page, of how we're going to continue to do that, layering, again, some of the public health research and the best practices. So it might be a little bit more work for Alan and your team to do, but I think we definitely need to have that lens as we're moving forward to making decisions.
We can certainly do that. The trick will be boiling down to half a page or a page, because I know there's an enormous amount of work going into it. But happy to reflect that and find the right language to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so I went too quickly. Other questions?
On that particular issue, I know that OSHA has new standards that they've put out as well. Is there a way that we could condense that, Alan, so that we're complying with OSHA, but also we promote those same practices, and then maybe perhaps have a link or something like that, so it's not so wordy in regards to the customer base?
Yeah, we can certainly look for ways to summarize and then provide links. I think, though, I'm hearing two different interests from you. One is reflecting something in the business plan, and the other would be sort of a broader audience, perhaps. And so I'll bring that back to our communications folks about what that might look like. Because as much as I wish that everybody read the business plan, I know it's a relatively smaller audience.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. That's good feedback, good discussion. So you will see this back in January, again, then to get out for public consultation thereafter and input as we refine it and also match it with what you just saw from Dee and Nancy in the backdrop of our financial realities that we are facing. So knowing we're going through fiscal year 22 is the next cycle up. So thank you, Ellen. Mr. Board President, I've got two quick items I hope to move through here. I know this has been long. I just want to let you know that my next item is we have a semi-annual DBE report that we send to the FTA regarding federally funded contracts. So I normally don't raise that with the board, but I thought this recent submission had some really important highlights that I think all of you and all of this agency should be proud of. And specifically, it showed that 9 out of every $10 awarded between April and September this year actually went to DBE firms. It's the first time in our history that this has actually happened, and I think it's one time to be very proud of that. And another measure of note that some 35% of the subcontract awards under the prime contract awards also went to DBEs and benefited actually 22 firms in that same period of time. So that is new for this agency, and I think something everybody should be proud of. So I just thought I'd share that.
Can I clarification here? Is that across all capital project contracts, or what does that encompass?
Yes, all awarded capital projects.
Thank you.
I don't mean to rain on that, but is part of that number skewed by the Powell project?
Yep, that's part of it.
Okay.
A dollar's a dollar. So
I understand. Thank you.
But if we're always open to taking more money and to help do this even more, so I'll bigger borrow. The final item is I do want to take a moment, if I may, Mr. Board President, to recognize one of our important executive directors who's made a really important decision, and that's to retire. Bernie Bottomley has chosen to retire, and as this is his second tour of duty, and for those of all of us who've worked with him, he has been an amazing contributor to TriMet, to part of my leadership team. I know Neil McFarland before, and to this region. He's been a great thought leader, and his last day will be January 18th. And Mr. Board President, I would like to submit a resolution that of honoring him and his great service to this agency. So, if I may, if you're comfortable helping me get through that through your end and the board's comfort, I'd like to propose that.
Good. Well, would you like me to read that? Because obviously I feel awful about him leaving. This is bad news twice today.
Well, I'm just hoping he's not going to work at Gresham for the new mayor.
Well, let me do this. Let me read through this because I think this is a very important resolution, and we do need to recognize Bernie for his years of service. So this is a resolution honoring Bernie Bottomley, and it's Resolution 20-12-44 of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, honoring Executive Director of Public Affairs Bernie Bottomley for his years of TriMet leadership. And it says, whereas the TriMet Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, TriMet, and its board of directors wishes to honor Bernie Bottomley for more than 16 years of dedicated work in service to this agency in the region. And whereas Bernie Bottomley has served as TriMet's governmental affairs director for a decade, from 1992 to 2002, helping advance significant light rail and equity milestones for the agency. And whereas he successfully led the charge in the 1995 special session, securing $375 million in state funding for the South-North Light Rail project, and whereas during his tenure, he organized the first regional coalition of senior and disabled transit provider organizations in 1997, unifying, amplifying, and creating a powerhouse of activists for the state legislature to grapple with for years to come. And whereas Bernie has most recently served as the executive director of public affairs for more than 6.5 years, from June 14th 2014 to present, during which he's left an indelible mark on the agency and has created a legacy of lasting and positive change. And whereas Mr. Bottomley worked diligently with the Obama and Trump administrations to secure final federal funding for the MAC Orange Line project, and whereas his guidance and oversight were critical in the formation of the community-based, member-based House Bill 2017 committee, whose work was integral in the division of equitable shares of the new state resources, out of which came a permanent transit revenue source and the funding mechanism for TriMet's alternative fuel bus program, low-income fare program, and the student fare program subsidies. And whereas Bernie has demonstrated a staunch and long-standing support for organizations representing communities of color, low-income citizens, and people with disabilities, and his consistent advocacy for equitable practices help yield the decriminalization of TriMet fare enforcement system and a reevaluation of TriMet's safety and security practices. And whereas he has demonstrated strong team leadership, brilliant public policy acumen, and steadfast dedication to TriMet and the community we serve. And whereas his humor and levity have been infectious and will be truly missed, now therefore it be resolved that the TriMet Board of Directors and the TriMet staff hereby express their sincere gratitude to Bernie Bottomley for his dedicated service. Be it further resolved that a framed copy of this resolution will be presented to Bernie Bottomley as an expression of our heartfelt respect and appreciation. Great resolution. And with that, I'd like to ask if there's a motion to approve this resolution and a second.
So moved.
So moved.
Linda.
Second.
Did we get that? Was that you, Travis?
Yeah, Travis takes the second. Linda takes the motion.
All right, good. Oh, okay. So is there discussion on this resolution?
I'll go first.
Yeah,
All right,
Go ahead, Travis.
All right.
Who's introducing us to your successor, Bernie?
That'll be the general manager.
All right. Well, certainly, I feel sorry for the rest of the board in that Bernie saw it as a requirement that with me stepping down, he needed to leave. He just said, "Wow, we've been working together for so long." No, all kidding aside, Bernie has absolutely contributed to our organization in so many ways, and not just the organization, but the entire community with his efforts. So greatly appreciate the opportunity to work with you, Bernie. And we've worked in other capacities throughout the years. In each of those capacities, there's just been great work done across all of those as we look at the impact that you have had on this community, the state even, and some of your earlier contributions and efforts and positions that you had even at the federal level. So again, I wish you well in your retirement, and I just can't say enough about all of the contributions you've made and the enjoyment that I've had working with you. So thank you, and good luck.
This is Linda. Hey, Bernie. Reading this or hearing about this resolution, it brings to mind a lot of impact that you've had in this agency that I wasn't even aware of. And so congratulations for that. What is so unique is that you've been in the agency long enough that you've developed a depth of knowledge and contribution that one sign of a really incredible professional is when they have to be replaced by multiple people. And I've oftentimes thought that your portfolio of responsibilities was so large, and yet you've managed it with such poise and professionalism. And I've just really enjoyed working with you. And from one retired person to another, I can tell you it's fabulous. And you get to choose how you spend your days. And I hope you're not a stranger. Thank you.
Thanks.
I guess I would like to begin my remarks with we're going to have to I think, take the general manager to the woodshed or budget him for some handcuffs, so we can keep these people handcuffed to their desk. In all seriousness, Bernie, I really have appreciated working with you, even though it's only been a short time. You've had a huge impact on TriMet. You've had an impact on me as well, because of our experience. And I appreciate the fact that you come with a comprehensive worldview. And that worldview is not lost on the fact that you come with a common sense approach to resolve issues and concerns that we have that certainly serve not only TriMet, but serve the community at large. And so I just want to thank you for that. And I appreciate you, and I appreciate all that you've done. And we all deserve retirement. I get that. And I just look forward to you and appreciate the fact that even though you're leaving physically, the impact and the far-reaching values and goals that you have put forward in TriMet will remain after you. And so I thank you again for that, and hope you enjoy your retirement. And my best advice to you is take a year off and then decide on what you want to do, because you're not gonna be sitting back in a rocking chair, I know. But certainly I do appreciate what you've done and given to TriMet and to our community. Thank you very much. Enjoy.
This is Lori. I'll speak up next. You know, I also am just terribly sorry that Bernie is leaving. He knows absolutely everybody and absolutely everything, comprehensive knowledge of the agency and its history. And I have just valued so much working with him and all of the great contributions he's made. So yes, congratulations on your retirement. I'm retired too. It's great. But you will surely be missed, and thank you for all you've done.
I also just want to add into what everyone else is already saying before. I know Bernie, we only had sort of a short overlap, I guess, compared to some of the other board members. But, I have to admit, everywhere that I go where transportation comes up, your name also comes up along with it. And that just, I think, goes to show just how much of a fixture you are, not only in TriMet, but just in the transportation world, here in Oregon. So I feel really fortunate to have crossed paths with you on a couple of different things that were sort of testy subjects. I remember when you gave a presentation on fearless transit, and I was thinking to myself, wow, we're actually listening on how, this could maybe work out or not work out. And what maybe some of the pitfalls of looking at a fearless system can be. And so I just really appreciate you for not shying away from any topic, that might seem controversial or impossible to discuss or debate about, and for really leaning into this work and really leaning into all the different diverse perspectives that I think you've really, helped bring into the organization. So you'll be missed. And I also I am not retired. I don't plan on retiring soon, but I am very jealous of you and what you'll be able to do during your time off.
I'd simply like to add a brief comment, because what more can be said? Bernie, your legacy is palpable out there in the world. Thank you. Thank you for everything you have done for the agency, all the years you've given it. You have demonstrated how to manage and navigate complicated issues with many stakeholders. You have shown how difficult it can be to give the people what they want. And you have shown how challenging it can be to have to put together all the pieces to make it work. To make anything work. And so it's great to have seen you operate in these few years. I think our region is better served for it. I'm glad to know that in retirement, you've still got a lot of potential out there for good work. And I can only say I hope that you're still available to provide insight, because I think the benefits to this region will continue to be felt by what you can do, even in retirement. As someone who knows how to navigate this kind of complexity, it's not often to see people that can do that. So I just want to thank you and acknowledge how lucky we are to have had you navigating all of this stuff on behalf of the agency.
Well, Bernie, sorry, so did I walk over somebody then? So Bernie, this is Bruce. I wanted to really thank you for all you have done. I think we go back probably to about 1990, something like that, in terms of the West Side Light Rail project.
West Side Light Rail, Washington County, yeah.
Yeah, when you were working for Congressman Aucoin. And I think you hit it right, Kathy. He was a fixer. He was somebody that knew how to get things done politically. They were done quietly. They were done in a respectful manner. And what I always appreciate about Bernie was he would tell you when you were doing something stupid, and we could figure out how to get it done. And I will miss you. The region will miss you. The region has no idea all of the things that you've been involved in over your career, but it's extensive. And I think if we wanted to actually put it in a resolution, it'd probably go on for 15 pages. And I know you wouldn't want that because that's not your style. But I really do wish you well in your retirement. I hope you're able to play lots of tennis. I hope you are able to say no to a lot of folks, because you will be in demand. And take it from me, do wait at least 6 months or a year before you say yes to anything, because you will be busier than you ever wanted to be. But congratulations to you. We're just so pleased that you're retiring, and looks like you're in great health. So that's what we want you to be. Doug, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, we're hiring. No, just kidding. No, I have nothing else to add. It's all been said. It's all been done.
All right. So then with that, is there, I'm ready to take the vote on the resolution. All those in favor of I got to look at the actual resolution number because I've thrown in my recycle already. All of those in favor of the motion to approve resolution honoring Bernie Bottomley, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. We will get it signed and get it framed and get it to you, Bernie. Bernie, did you want to say anything to us before we say goodbye to you?
Well, yeah, I do. There's two rules. One is never stand between a group and the bar being open, and the other is never stand between a group and the bathroom break, which I see in the chat is in high demand right now. But first, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for those kind words. I do like to operate in the background, but I'm working on trying to accept that kind of show of affection, and so I'll take this opportunity to let it sink in. So thank you all so very, very much for those kind words. I do want to say that it's been my honor and privilege to work for a great organization with a great team of leaders, from the general manager to the executive team and the public affairs division staff, who have just been tremendous folks to work with, a really skilled team. You're never appreciated at home. Folks around the country look at TriMet and the work that we do here with envy and admiration. They recognize TriMet as one of the leaders in the country around things like light rail, but also a lot of the other work that we do on equity, on this new effort to reimagine security on the system. I don't know that our local community recognizes that TriMet is a national, even international leader on this work, and really in our willingness to examine some of these questions and take on some of these hard issues. We're doing more in this arena than really anybody else is, and it's been a pleasure and a privilege to work with an organization that's willing to take on that hard work and to be as innovative and introspective as we have. And then finally, to the board, I've worked with a lot of you as you've been nominated for the board and helped identify folks in the community who might be willing to serve on the board. And to you, I'd like to say, I'm sorry. No, kidding. You do the public service that is the bedrock of the kind of government, small g, that is the benchmark, the hallmark of our community. That there are volunteers, people who are not getting paid, who are willing to spend their time and their energy serving the community as unpaid volunteers. Sometimes that's glamorous. I can't think of a time right now that it was glamorous, but I'm sure there are some. But a lot of the time, it's grunt work. It's plowing through contract, resolutions and identifying issues where the staff need additional guidance. But a lot of time, it's taking flack for tough decisions that are unavoidable. There's only so many dollars in the piggy bank, and there's more demand than there are dollars, and so it's a tough decisions that you're making, and there's always folks in the community who are going to criticize that, and you end up being the sharp end of the spear in those situations. And I don't think you get enough credit and enough recognition for the fact that that you are the ones who have to make those tough decisions and be present for the community to acknowledge the feedback that the community is ultimately going to provide in those situations. So thank you for your work and your energy and your time and dedication and supporting this wonderful agency and the incredible region that we live in. So appreciate everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernie. So you're right, it is time for a break. I have one item I'm going to get to before the consent agenda, but let's take a break first. Everybody's been very patient. So how about we take a 10-minute break and reconvene about 11:31? Is that okay with everybody? Yep, I'm saying that. So we are adjourned for 10 minutes. And before we get into the consent agenda, I wanted to ask the board to consider a motion that I'd like to make. I guess I forgot it because I wanted to do it right after we said goodbye to Travis, but I guess I was too bummed. So what I want to do is make a motion to appoint Director Lori Irish-Bauman as Vice President of the TriMet Board on an interim basis. As I think we all know, after Travis and myself, Director Bauman is the most senior TriMet board member, having served on the board since her appointment by the governor in 2015. She regularly demonstrates a deep knowledge of TriMet and a calm, steady hand, qualities that are exactly what TriMet needs during these times of extreme change. And what I'm envisioning is the interim appointment would be until we have a new board member replacement for Travis, which looks like it will probably be early next year sometime, at which time we, the board, would then vote on a resolution for a full slate of board officer and committee appointments. So in the meantime, Director Bauman would fill all the duties that Travis has been performing as Vice President, including serving on the Finance and Audit Committee. So that's my motion. With that motion, that I made, that I'm going to make a move to make that motion a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry. What was that?
I don't mean to correct you, but I don't think you can make that motion. But I will certainly make that motion.
Well, then why don't you make that motion?
And I'll make the
let
second.
somebody else second it.
Travis will second.
All right. I'll ask our general counsel who advised me whether I could make that motion, but thank you. Is there any discussion of this motion? I think I've talked with everybody.
I'm
hearing none, then I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to establish or appoint Director Lori Irish Bauman as Vice President on an interim basis, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? I will declare that unanimous. With that, I'm going to move on to the next thing on our agenda, which is the consent agenda. And as you all know, the items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and can be approved by the board in a one blanket motion. And any board member can pull an item off the consent agenda for discussion or questions by requesting such prior to consideration of this portion of the agenda. And I will point out for anybody listening, there's two items: the approval of the board minutes for our meeting of October 28th, 2020. And then there's a resolution, reading, which specifies reading of ordinances, because we have two of them on our agenda today, to be done by title only. So is there anything on the consent agenda today board member would like to have removed or has questions about?
Careful, buddy.
I don't have any questions. There's a correction of Lori Irish Bauman's. The first mention of her name is misspelled, and that needs to be corrected. Other than that, that's the only thing that I have.
Thank you for that catch. We'll make sure that that is corrected. Anything else?
I move to approve the consent agenda, which contains the approval of the board meeting minutes for October 28th, 2020, and the reading of ordinances by title only.
With the noted changes that recommended by
With the
Director
noted changes
Edwards.
by Director Edwards.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Perfect. Is there a second?
Second, Travis.
All right. All those in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda as presented with the minor change, please signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is approved unanimously. All right, let's move on to our resolutions. We have three of them. The first resolution is Resolution 20-12-45, which is approving the FY 22-23 Transportation Improvement Plan. And I know that at least one of you has read all 110 pages of the attachment, and so did I. So, Mr. General Manager, you want to provide the report on this?
Yes, a few comments, then I'm going to turn it over to Tom Mills and Bernie as needed. So just a reminder for the board members that every 2 years we're required by law to update the plan, STIF, or the statewide transportation improvement funds. This is all part of the Keep Oregon Moving Act. The plan was presented at a virtual town halls set of meetings held in October, as well as on our website, where visitors could provide feedback and comments accordingly. What you have before you requires board approval to be able to then submit to the state. The STIF plan you have before you allocates ongoing funding for a variety of programs. Examples of it would include things like the low-income fare program, service expansion, free and reduced fares for high schools who live in low-income households, service for elderly and disabled riders, and expansion of our non-diesel bus program as examples. It provides funding for improvements to improving the customer experience on the system as well. And things like real-time arrival information are just examples of those products recently. It also helps fund our enhanced transit concepts that we can use with the support of our jurisdictional partners, getting buses out of traffic, the rose lanes, things of that nature, to speed them up and to be on time. One significant change I think worth noting here, because of COVID-19, the state legislature, they updated the law to allow for the funds specifically. We spoke about this a bit in the general manager report earlier, to be used for service preservation, not just expansion. It is intended to be temporary after we presented directly to the legislature, and they were very understanding and accommodating. So that is a significant change for this year. So we've indefinitely paused our expansion plans, and we remain at about 90% of service. And that 80 to 90%, we're going to see how people vote with their feet here and relative to our affordability. The goal is to keep that level of service, but we may have to default back to 80, but we will see how time unfolds prior to the pandemic. So, Mr. Board President, members of the board, your approval is recommended.
And Doug, would you like me to start the presentation?
Yeah, if you can just kick into the, through
sure.
a fairly high overview.
Okay. Yeah, just to kind of remind the board, we every 2 years we have to update this plan. Actually, let me share my screen here real quickly. There we go. Sharing abilities. So I'll try to be quick through this. I know we're running a little behind. Just to remind ourselves, the Keep Oregon Moving, HB 2017 Keep Oregon Moving law included a new tax that funded the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund, the STIF program. It is a 1/10% tax on all payrolls statewide. 90% of it that's generated in this region comes back to us, and the other 10% is broken up for competitive grant programs and some administrative work that ODOT receives. We must provide a plan every year. We are the qualified entity for the entire 3-county region, which means our plan includes areas outside the TriMet district that the counties themselves put together. And as you can see in this list, I won't go through all of it, but the program has to touch on at least some, if not all of these items, and we do touch on all of these topics. Going back to 2020, to February of 2020, this board approved our HB 2017 Transit Advisory Committee roster. That committee is probably the most diverse committee I've ever participated on. We are 50%, 7% women, 43% BIPOC, and that group has met monthly since February. And you can see the types of groups that it represents of there. And if we were to actually look at the advocates themselves, you'll see quite a number of, excuse me, I should be in presentation mode, organizations that work in the transportation sphere that you've become familiar with over the years. So we're getting really great from everyone. 2 years ago, this board approved the plan. We call it the PTIP, the Public Transportation Improvement Plan. It's what's accessible to the public, very readable. What we submit to ODOT really is more of an application. And it's a 5-year plan addressing all of the items that you see listed here. And then additionally, as I mentioned, this plan also includes improvements outside the TriMet district, including the rural parts of the county, as well as in Clackamas County, they have 4 small transit providers, and we've asked all of them to develop their own plans, which we have then combined with the STIF plan. I do want to note that TriMet acts as the compliance monitor on behalf of ODOT for these other entities. So we are in charge, Nancy Young and her team are in charge of ensuring that they are spending the funds appropriately. And this isn't always it's somewhat of a thankless job on our part, but it is what we have to do as our role as the qualified entity for the region. So the new STIF plan, again, has funding going to all of those programs that were in the last STIF plan. So it's mostly an update, but there are some new things to the plan. First off, I want to mention every year when we submit the STIF plan, or excuse me, every 2 years, we must update our equity map. So this is an updated equity map. It's still mostly telling the same story, however. The equity areas are predominantly in East Portland, East Multnomah County, in the Clackamas Town Center area, Oregon City, McLaughlin, the Highway 217 areas, as well as Aloha, Hillsborough, and Forest Grove, Cornelius, and along with the Columbia Corridor. Pretty much so, and downtown Portland, pretty much so the same areas that we saw last time around, with here and there showing some transit, or excuse me, some census block groups that were, maybe aren't an equity area now, but other ones that crossed the threshold and were. Basically, that happens because there's a number of census block groups that are really just on either just over the threshold or just under the threshold. And so I think every couple of years they kind of go back and forth. Additionally, new to the STIF plan is some funding that goes towards the Special Transportation Funds program. You're probably familiar with STF. The TriMet is the administrator of those funds, similar to the STIF program. And those funds are predominantly funded with money coming from the cigarette tax, as well as some gasoline tax money. But every biennium, the legislature also supplements that STF program with general fund. And that's what's occurred over the last so many years, although the amount has never been consistent. It's always kind of gone up and down. In the 2019 legislative session, however, the legislature decided not to allocate any general funds to the STF program, and instead they requested ODOT to propose a combined STF-STIF program to be approved at the 2020 legislative session. However, if we all recall, that legislative session ended early due to a walkout, and they never actually got to combine those programs. So it did come up in the June emergency legislative session, but because of the lateness of that, the program, the combination of the two programs is now scheduled for the FY 24-25 biennium. However, that still leaves a problem because the legislature never allocated money to the general fund money to the STF program. So our committee has decided to step in and fill the gap. We call it STF supplemental. And so they're allocating funds to fill that gap until the FY 24-25 biennium, when the programs will be combined. Additionally, new to the program, as Doug had mentioned, were service preservation funds. Normally, the legislation only allows us to expand service, but because of COVID-19, the legislature passed HB 1601, which allows us to put money towards service preservation. And at this time, the committee set aside $42 million over FY 22-23 biennium. And that is the money that Nancy Young had mentioned in her presentation about possible service preservation in FY 23. So what does that mean for our programs? I won't go through all the numbers, but what I'll show you on the right side is what is increasing and what is decreasing. So for the low income fare, we actually decided to still increase that program because there is a recession. We think that as people return, there may be more demand for low income fare. And prior to COVID, that program was really operating on all cylinders. So we expect there will still be strong demand for that. Service expansion, this expansion is very slight. It's not a lot of money. It's only to maybe expand a couple lines trying to live up to or meet our commitments to the Rose Lane improvements, just a couple of them. Most of that money is actually to maintain the service expansions that we did in the last biennium. So it's really kind of service maintenance mostly. The next four programs are all the same. We're keeping them at the same level. But the capital program, we have decreased on that. The committee decided, if there's going to be a shortage of funds, let's take that out of the capital program. So really that savings that we're getting that we can put towards service preservation is coming out of both the capital program as well as slowing down our service expansion. Additionally, I would say that we have a lot of money that we have received that we haven't spent yet in the capital program because it takes time to stand up these programs. And so we're slowing those down and we're using that money for that service preservation as well. And you'll see, as I mentioned, the STF supplemental and service preservation are new programs. So we took this plan to the public. As Doug mentioned, we had the virtual town halls. During the town halls, we had an English town hall and a Spanish town hall. During them, we had 99 people viewing the English town hall and 31 viewing the Spanish town hall. But additionally, we put those town halls up online, and you can see we had 6,900 people view the English and 1,800 people view the Spanish, far more than we've ever had, had we done a live town hall. So that was quite impressive. And then, of course, reactions, comments, shares, we're able to track that and see how many people reacted positively towards the town halls. Lastly, I want to mention we did have an online survey, and you can see the number of respondents and comments we received. And when you look at the responses were generally very positive responses, especially with the allocation of funds towards seniors and people with disabilities. That had the highest. The same with the service preservation money. So people really want us to try to maintain the service as best we can, and that also received the highest. I averaged all the comments about the capital, all the different capital programs, and the STF supplemental is coming from the comments regarding the senior disabled transit. So as Doug had mentioned, we're hoping today that you could pass a resolution. The HB 2017 Transit Advisory Committee unanimously approved the plan on November 20th, and the legislation does require us to get the board to adopt the plan. The plan is due to ODOT on February 1st, so that's a month and a half away, which seems like we still have a lot of time. But last time the application was 400 pages. So it takes a bit of time to put together. So your approval today would be greatly appreciated. And that's all we have.
Thank you. So with that, I see Director Way has her hand up.
Oops. Yes, I do. Tom, thank you for your presentation. I have a question and a comment, or just an inquiry. So when you had brought up the equity map, would it be possible for you to pull
Absolutely.
that map up again?
Yeah, let me pull up. Okay, and I apologize if I sped through that. There we go.
Yeah, I think this is sort of important to sort of look at a little bit more closely because, as you mentioned, this is based on 2010 census data. Is that correct? Or
this is using ACS data. So the difference between the census and ACS is a sampled or data, but it's more recent. So I believe this comes from 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, I see the source there. Okay, great. And so I guess how are we defining equity
Oh yeah, great. Thank you for asking that. And I apologize for not mentioning that. So we are using our committee asked to use the 10-factor analysis that our our Transit Equity, Inclusion and Community Affairs Department has developed. They've used that with TIAC in the past. And within that, the 10 factors, if I can remember them all, are race, income, seniors, people with disabilities, youth, and then it gets into things like services, grocery stores, things like that, affordable housing, people who don't have vehicles, so that all is compiled to create a index that we then apply to our map. And what we do is we say anything that is the top 25, the top quartile, so the top 25% highest scoring census block is then considered an equity area. And so that's what you see on the map there. I would also point out that our committee chose for poverty or for income, they chose 200% of poverty. So that's greater than the Title VI average of 150%. So they go a little bit further than that.
Thank you so much for that explanation. That's really helpful. I guess my next sort of just question, and then I'll wrap up, is, so given that we have, here's this really great equity map, now we're able to sort of figure out, areas with the greatest need. How are we factoring this map into just the fiscal reality of our budget and, as you said, slowing down service expansion? So for example, I live in Clackamas County. I'm seeing now huge growth areas, right, around equity blocks in Gladstone, Oregon City, due to a lot of different factors, but mainly due to housing. In the Portland metro area, really pushing people down. The communities that I serve, right, on transit, on TriMet. So I guess how are we going to sort of factor in the needs that are sort of expanding regionally, and also given the realities that we're not going to expand service, but we are gonna, really buckle down and just try to preserve what we have? And does that happen at the STIF table, or does that happen at other tables?
Sure. Yeah, great question. Just to back up a little bit, the plan itself, as I mentioned, was a 5-year plan, and so in terms of service expansion, the decisions of what lines to expand and making sure that those lines are serving these equity areas were determined in the last STIF plan. And because it takes a number of years to kind of buy the buses, train the operators, et cetera, we couldn't do it all in the last 2 years of the STIF plan. So that effort still continues into this STIF plan. However, the economic situation requires us to slow down. But those improvements are all geared, or all touching and serving these equity areas throughout the region. Now, in terms of the fact that we are slowing things down and maybe even having to reduce service, as Doug had mentioned, we'll continue to go back to what we had worked on, what I believe we had presented to the board previously about kind of having some factors that we want to make sure that we consider as we reduce service. And one of those is equity. So when we reduced service in April, we did not reduce service on any of the lines that qualify as equity lines, or serving equity communities, I should say. And so, if we have to reduce again, there's another effort there. But with Doug's direction, if we want to include equity as a reason not to reduce service, then I think we would do so.
Okay. Thank you. This is incredibly helpful, and I'm just sort of trying to emphasize these points because, even as Bernie mentioned earlier, as public officials, the impact of service is what people are going to come to us about, right? For the most part, they're not going to see their buses anymore. The hours are going to be reduced, and so I just want to have a better understanding of how we get to the decisions that we're making. So this is super helpful, and really appreciate all your answers, Tom. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I do want to be just comment, if I may, just for a second. We are not immediately looking to reduce service. I think this is just something on the horizon as we factor into FY22 and 23, later 22, maybe 23. The 10% from 80 to 90 may be in question, but that's about the only ones right now. So I just want to make sure that we don't over calibrate that there's a plan for region-wide or targeted reduction services, because that is not the case right now.
Director Simmons, I know you had a question.
Actually, I have a comment.
Okay.
Tom Mills and Doug are familiar with my concern in this area, but I'm going to read to you a statement that was made recently to the committee by the mayor of Tualatin. As a regional job center that is home to over 25,000 workers, Tualatin is at the center of the congestion, climate, and equity transportation challenge. Congestion and limited options for transportation on 99W, Tualatin Sherwood Road, and in the Bridgeport area, which according to ODOT is the home to the highest traffic intersection in the state, are reaching a point where access to living wage jobs is becoming inaccessible, or come at a major transportation and time cost to families. I sat in on the last meeting of the task force, and I was pleased to hear that Washington County for the 22-23 year has some carryover funds that they're going to dedicate to start to address some of the internal issues. For example, TriMet lines do provide line 97, 76, and 96. They provide connections between Tualatin and Portland, but what limits their use is connections within the community and in job centers. The first and last mile shuttles would provide this key link. And so this is not new to staff, but I want to highlight it to all board members. And it's very similar to what Kathy was referencing in her comments about Clackamas. Another issue that has been before the committee for some time and within the community for almost a decade is the lack of ability for people to go between the west side and the east side of Portland. And so I'm told that there is an opportunity to potentially get some pilot resources through a discretionary grant that has been applied for and recommended by TriMet, but the funding hasn't been approved yet. That would provide the ability for a shuttle from Bridgeport through Borland Road in Tualatin, ending up at Stafford Road on 205. And I'll get my numbers mixed up here, 205, where Wilsonville's Smart Line would stop and pick up individuals wanting to go to the Clackamas Town Center. So if that discretionary grant is approved, then that would happen within 22-23. Also noted by Washington County representative was that the real issue in this region is 24-25, when their one-time discretionary funds are not available. And so I bring this to the board. It's not unique to our area. I'm aware of that. But I really think we have to start thinking in some of these outlying areas of a hub and spoke system of delivering services, something that provides some circular services with these communities that drops them off at another destination that provides direct line to different places. And I'm sure it's offered in some areas within the region, but with the absence of funding for the Southwest Corridor and the inability for people to move west to east and east to west, you know, it's creating real issues for these communities. So those are my comments.
Good comments, and like you said, it's not uncommon. There's other places around the region where we have that same issue. So I appreciate that. Other comments or questions by the board for staff on this one? Seeing none, then, is the board ready to offer a motion to approve Resolution 20-12-45?
This is Lori, so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Who was that? Oh, that was Keith?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So is there further discussion on this resolution? Hearing none, now I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 20-12-45, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. Thank you. Let's move on to this. I'm sorry, what was that, Keith?
Oh, this was Tom. I just said thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right, good. Let's move on to the next resolution, 20-12-46, which is authorizing a contract with Cochrane Inc. for on-call electrical services. Mr. General Manager.
Yes, thank you very much. Oops, hang on here. Make sure I'm unmuted here. Yes, in July of this year, TriMet received a fire inspection citation that cited that some existing lighting fixtures at our Center Street facility were non-compliant or not meeting code. Specifically, the citation requested the installation of LED lighting to replace our fixtures that are basically at the end or near the end of their life expectancy. The contract TriMet had initially executed allowed the agency to take advantage of several cost-saving benefits, including a subsidy from the Energy Trust of Oregon, as well as a procurement process that allowed TriMet to take advantage of some competitively bid unit pricing that ensured best value. It provided for North Coast Electric Company to provide light fixtures and controls at our Center Street facility. The resolution, I say that because the resolution before you now asks the board to approve a contract modification for $1.1 million to cover the lighting improvements for our Ruby Junction, Merlot, and Elmonica facilities to accomplish essentially the same thing. The facilities have not been inspected, but there have been no citations issued. So we're really trying to get ahead of this one, knowing it's likely going to come, knowing the Center Street was at end of life, because they have the same outdated lighting system. So we think by acting now, it allows us to maintain the cost benefits we obtained in the initial execution of the contract. The funding, just so you're aware, is included in our maintenance operations FY21, our current budget. And in terms of North Coast, they employ 741 individuals, 13.5% are identified as minorities, and 17% plus identified as female. So Karen Powell is here if there's any technical questions you have, and your recommendation is requested. Your approval is requested, sorry.
So I want to make sure, I think you were talking about the North Coast.
I got the right one?
I think we're on the Cochrane.
Oh, did I do that? I jumped ahead, did I? Oh my, okay.
I think you had the discussion correct, but I think that it was, if I'm right, this one involves the lighting and the Energy Trust, or does it?
Correct. Yeah, this is about North Coast. This is the one for North Coast of 2012-46. The next one up is 2012-47, which is actually Cochrane.
Okay, I have the other way around on my agenda here.
Yeah, that's what's happening.
Oh, okay. So we got to revisit it. Okay.
So so you were doing a staff report on 1247.
Yeah, I was doing the North Coast one, the North Coast Electric one. That's showing on mine is 2012-46.
Ah.
Okay. Other way around. See what's on the. So,
oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
That's the confusion. So let's go to what staff put up the resolution for 124047, which is, I believe, what you just did the staff report for.
Okay. I'll change mine to 47. You stay where you are, and then I'll change the other one to 46. So if you're comfortable to do 47 first, then the one I just covered,
I'm comfortable. Let's see if there are questions. I bet you Keith has a question on this one. Or comment. I guess Keith doesn't have a question or comment. So is it clear? Is the board ready then to offer a motion to approve resolution 20-12-47?
So moved. Travis.
Okay. There's a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion on this? Well, Ozzy, was that you that seconded it?
No. Yes, it was.
Yeah. All right. So is there any further discussion on this resolution? Hearing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve resolution 20-12-47, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. All right, thank you. Well, let's go back then to resolution 20-12-46, which is authorizing a contract with Cochrane, Inc. for on-call electrical services.
Okay, well, let me try this. Maybe I'll bat 500. That's good in baseball.
It is.
Cochrane, I think you're aware, is the contract that performed the lighting upgrade at the Center Street reference. I even just referenced in the last resolution. The costs were depleted, the value remaining in our existing contract with Cochrane, and they resulted in the need for a new procurement to perform more on-call services. We did receive, in this case, 2 bids, and Cochrane emerges the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. This contract will cover a 5-year term for a maximum of $2.5 million. It'll be a task-based ordered drawdown, if you will. And their local workforce is 15% minority and 20% female. The type of services included in this one, they include repairs, maintenance, installation, inspections that are beyond the experience and certifications of our own staff. So we're looking for some extra expertise here. So, and these are also, like the last resolution, they're also included in this fiscal year's budget. Your recommendation is requested.
All right. Questions or comments by the board on this one?
So moved for approval.
All right. Is there a second?
Second, this is Lori.
All right. So Linda and Lori, got that one. All right. Is there, there's a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion on this resolution before I call the question? Was that a yes? Nope. I'm hearing none. So I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor of the motion to approve resolution 20-12-46, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. All right, that should take care of all of our resolutions. We're going to move into the ordinances. And the first ordinance is ordinance number 360, which is going to be a first reading regarding the establishment of the Rosa Parks Day. And we had discussion about this about last year about this same time. We're going to hold a public hearing on this because this is the first reading. I would just ask if there's any staff report on this before we ask the board if they have any questions, and I'll open up the public hearing.
No staff report.
Okay. So are there any questions or comments by the board? All right, hearing none then. This is the first reading, and I'm going to open the public hearing on ordinance number 360.
Yay.
And I would ask if Jeff, if you know of anybody who signed in who wanted to testify on this ordinance. I take it that's a no. Does anybody, any of the staff know of anybody who wants to testify on this ordinance?
Not at this time.
All right. Well, hearing no one wants to testify on ordinance 360, I'm going to close the public hearing. And we'll note that we will have a second reading of this ordinance and a vote to approve or not at our January 2021 meeting.
Board President Warner?
Oh, I guess I need to read it by title only, don't I?
Yes.
Sorry. Go ahead, Council.
Thank you. So we'll just do the first reading. Ordinance number 360 of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, establishing Rosa Parks Day and revising TriMet Code Chapter 19. And as you noted, this is the first reading and public hearing.
Thank you. So I better open the public hearing again now. We still know of nobody who wants to testify, so I'm going to close the public hearing. We had no questions from the board, so we will have a second reading and a vote at our January 2021 meeting on ordinance 360. So we're done with that item. I'm going to move on to the next ordinance, which is the first reading of ordinance 361. I'm first going to ask General Counsel Shelley Devine to read the ordinance by title only.
I would be happy to do that. Could they just pull up, or thank you, ordinance number 361 of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, amending Chapter 14 of the TriMet Code to revise the definition of net earnings from self-employment. This is the first reading.
And Doug or Shelley, do you have any staff report you want to make on this one?
There is no staff report for this one.
Okay, I would just point out that this is something we do every year to make sure our code links up with the Internal Revenue Services codes. So it's something we have to do.
Yep, correct.
So are there any questions by the board on this ordinance? All right. So with that, this is our first reading and does require a public hearing. So I'm going to open a public hearing on ordinance 361. Does the staff or anybody know of somebody who wants to testify on ordinance 361?
Not at this time.
All right. Hearing none, then I will close the public hearing. And based on that, we will have a second reading and a vote on this ordinance 361, and also at our January 2021 meeting. So looking at that, that concludes all of the business items, I believe, of our board meeting for today. Are there any other items staff or the board knows of that needs to be taken care of in our business meeting?
None from management.
Okay. I'm hearing nothing from the board. So with that, I'm going to adjourn our business meeting. Now, Doug and I have been talking via text. You can see we have, it's now 12:17. We have two items that are on here. We've been suggesting maybe continuing to defer the fare enforcement program until January, or maybe even a special meeting, and have just the meeting which we'd like to have the briefing on the pedestrian plan, right, Doug?
That is correct. Yes, because this will be coming back to the board I think it's intended to be for the January board meeting, because there are some time restrictions on this one alone.
So first off, is it okay with the board to defer the fare enforcement program briefing until January, or maybe if we need to schedule a special session on that?
Yes.
That was a yes. You're okay with deferring?
I want to say I'm very interested in that presentation, but I want to respect everyone's time. So I agree.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm
Good.
fine.
Okay. And is everybody okay with moving forward? It sounds like on the pedestrian plan then?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, Doug, I want to turn it back to you then. Let's go through the pedestrian plan briefing.
Okay, I'm just going to quickly introduce from Public Affairs. I think Eve is there. She is the lenders, as she's done some great work for us. And Eve, I think if you can give us the highlight version of this, and then we'll open it up for questions with the board. So knowing the time that we're, again, it's about 19:20 after now. So thank you for your help.
Well, thank you, everyone. Good afternoon, directors. I'm Eve Neelanders. I'm one of the service planners at TriMet. And Just give me 1 second while I figure out sharing my screen.
There you go.
I think you got it, Eve. There
Yeah,
we go.
I do. I'm trying to shift it to slide view. It sometimes doesn't exactly like. Right, perfect. Thank you for sticking around while after a very long meeting to cover this. I'm really proud to be able to share this with you. I had the pleasure of serving as the project manager for TriMet's first pedestrian plan, and this is an effort that was made possible thanks to a grant from ODOT, from their Transportation Growth Management program. And especially in a year where we've been short on hope and we've been short on good news, I think this is something that is pretty good news for for us as an agency, and also for our jurisdictional partners around the region. So first, you may wonder what business TriMet as a transit agency has doing a pedestrian plan. We aren't the owners of the right-of-way, and it's a bit unusual to plan for something that you don't own and that you have limited control over. However, we know that walking and transit really go together, and the walk to transit is part of the transit experience itself. In surveys we've done, we know that the vast majority of our transit riders walk to transit, and this is particularly true for our most vulnerable riders. As an agency, we've placed a strong value on reducing barriers that prevent people from walking to transit or from riding transit. And I think the best example of this is the adoption of the low-income fare program and fare capping. However, while we know that many of our riders can now afford to ride transit more easily, we know those physical barriers to riding transit remain for many of them. And this plan is really an attempt to help identify those physical barriers in the walk to transit and come up with ways in coordination with our jurisdictional partners on how to reduce those barriers. As I mentioned, this plan is a lot about partnership with the jurisdictions who own the right-of-way. They are also mandated in their transportation systems plans to plan for transit and to plan for walking. And therefore, the pedestrian plan can go a long way in helping them meet those obligations. Another way this is very useful is that it helps jurisdictions by developing a method to evaluate and rank their own pedestrian projects using a unique lens, which we know very well, the access to transit lens. And so with nearly 2,000 pedestrian projects from across the region evaluated using this particular approach, and with a methodology that can be applied to future projects, we think we produce something that's useful for the region. The purpose of the plan is fourfold. It's about providing a common resource for us and our partners. It's about helping our jurisdictional partners consider the access to transit lens as they look at their own projects and which to take on first. The findings of this plan can be used to support future funding efforts. And it also is a tool, it also resulted in a tool that can be used for future collaboration. The pedestrian plan has three guiding values: safety, equity, and demand. And these were developed with input from our stakeholders, and they directly inform how the projects were evaluated and ranked. And I'll get into them more later when we talk about how the plan methodology worked. This is a high-level view of how the process worked. We started the process in August of 2019. and we wrapped up in late October of this year. So in the remaining portion of this presentation, I'll walk you through these two threads in detail, the engagement work we did and the analysis that we conducted. And at the end, I'll talk about an exciting new development that we just learned about. So in terms of our engagement, we convened a stakeholder forum that met 4 times across the development of the plan. And their role was to guide the shaping of these plan values that I discussed, and also to help us develop the recommendations. The group was made up of representatives from organizations representing historically underserved communities, pedestrian advocacy groups, large employers, institutions of higher ed, as well as the jurisdictions themselves, which, as I mentioned, had a central role because of their role as the owners of the right-of-way. We also had several meetings with agency partners, and these meetings consisted of 16 cities and 3 counties, and all 3 counties. And these meetings focused on what the draft prioritization framework would look like when it was applied to particular pedestrian projects in their jurisdictions. In terms of the engagement of with the public, we tried to time it with larger outreach efforts connected with our annual service plan work. And one thing we did was we developed and released a survey where we asked people to tell us about their experiences walking to transit, what problems they encountered, what barriers they encountered, and what would help them walk to transit more. And we were really pleased with the responses we received. We received over 1,300 responses, and we heard very strongly from low-income riders, from riders of color, and from frequent riders. A little bit later on in the process, in February, we went back to the public to tell us what they thought of these 3 guiding values: equity, safety, and demand, and to see how they thought these values should be weighting in deciding which projects were most important to be considered in the region. And we allowed them to play with an interactive map that would update in real time how particular areas would rise to the top based on changing the weights of these 3 values. There was also a chance for them to identify particular locations where they encountered problems or barriers in their walk to transit, and then we submitted those the resulting list to the jurisdictions. Turning to the analysis, our analysis was a 5-step process in which we looked at first our existing service, our future transit service as called out in the service enhancement plans, and the existing pedestrian network. That was our base map for the process. Once we had that in place, we then mapped nearly 2,000 projects that were submitted to us by the cities and counties. And then the analysis that took place focused on linear projects. So here we're talking about sidewalks and trails and new roads with a pedestrian element. One of the shortcomings we found is that there is not a regional crossings data set that we could use. So that was one constraint we faced. We know that's really important for people walking to transit, but we weren't able to do what we wanted to do with it. Next, we evaluated how things would change when these projects were built. If these projects were built, how many more stops could be reached by pedestrians, how many more destinations would be within reach, and how the transit walkshade would increase if these projects were built. And finally, that step 5 was where everything came together, and we evaluated and ranked all the 2,000 projects based on those plan values. These next couple slides walk through this in a more visual fashion. So this was our base map of existing service and future transit service. This slide shows those nearly 2,000 projects submitted to us by the jurisdiction. So that's what you see in red. In yellow, there were additional gaps that were identified that could also be potential projects. And this slide digs a little bit deeper into the metrics that were used to evaluate and rank those nearly 2,000 projects. And we did have to choose metrics that were available for the entire service district. So for safety, we looked at a lot of metrics coming from Metro concerning dangerous roads, hazardous intersections, sidewalk completion, and streets that were very difficult to cross because of their street characteristics. For equity, we looked at where low-income populations lived, where communities of color resided, and also how seniors and people with disabilities traveled across our region. Turning to demand, we looked at population and employment density, what our ridership looks like now, and as well as projected ridership.
Hey, Eve, this is Bernie. Just a time check, we're at 12:30. So I don't know what the sense of the committee is, of the board is, but we probably need to wrap up.
I have about 3 more slides or 4. I probably will be done in 2 minutes. Does that work?
Okay.
All right. So when this prioritization framework was applied to those projects, we ended up with 5 tiers that were grouped by priority and how well they met these criteria. And this slide shows the top 2 tiers. So the highest priority are in purple, tier 1, and then tier 2 in green. We emerged with a project list that we shared with the jurisdictions, and I wanted to note that each jurisdiction's projects were ranked against each other's because it's meant to be a tool that's used to help them in setting their priorities. We also shared this with them in the form of an interactive map where they could see where their projects were as an internal tool. And for the sake of time, I'll be very brief on our recommendations. We emerged with 4 recommendations and 15 actions for TriMet and for our partners. And these are covered in more depth in the plan itself. The first is about making sure that planning work and funding reflect the importance of walking and rolling to transit. The second is about completing those sidewalk gaps and adding crossings. The third is primarily about design and designing well for pedestrians. And the final one is about how we coordinate and cooperate with our jurisdictional partners. The plan, I'm happy to say, is complete. But there's one thing that's coming out of this that I'm actually quite excited about, is that, as I mentioned, there's a shortcoming in terms of crossings data in the region. We just learned that ODOT has awarded us additional funding from the TGM program to do an in-depth look at those top tier intersections. So this is something that we hope will begin to address that. And I'm happy to report back on that in the future as well when we complete that. That's it for me. Thanks very much for fitting me in. And I'm happy to take any questions if there's time.
I just have a comment about the photograph on the screen now. It looks like that person is crossing against the light.
You know, I almost held off on putting this one up for that reason. This is on Division around 24th. I don't know if anybody can speak to that more. It's a weird intersection.
It is a weird intersection. Yes. Yep.
Bruce, I have a question.
Please.
By the way, I have the inability to raise my hand. For some reason, raising my hand function has disappeared. And this is really a question for you, Eve, and to Doug. Having served on the Metro Transportation Funding Task Force, when I realized this work predated, and there's funding for this, but as I recall, some of these issues were raised within that funding measure. And I don't know if you've ever looked to see if there's any crosswalk with what was in that funding measure and what this will accomplish that would make maybe a future funding measure, should Metro decide to tackle it, look at different things.
And Director Simmons, this is Bernie. I'll just jump in there. The neat thing about this plan is it really provides a foundation for a whole host of potential funding mechanisms. So if there's a future ballot measure, this can help inform that. The regional flexible fund allocation for the federal funds, and even the STIF funds that, the House Bill 2017 funds that we're allocating internally to improved ADA access, for example. But really the biggest source of funding is the cities themselves and the counties and ODOT. As they go through their normal sort of budget allocation process, this plan will really help inform them about where they can be putting their dollars to really help the pedestrian environment.
Well, exactly. And what's so interesting is that within the transportation funding measure, it was marrying city funds with, potential future revenue generated by the measure. And so, I just think this is absolutely marvelous work, and it's absolutely so important. Just recently within Tualatin, they have been completing sections of roadway that didn't have sidewalks, and what a big deal, and creating crosswalk areas in high demand areas. And that's another way to address safety issues for the agency. So kudos to the agency for this.
So yeah, just to add on to this, and I know we're short on time, is I also think this has a unintended intersection with just the strategic work we finished on reimagining safety security, particularly around lighting and intersections that aren't on our properties. And I think, as John Gardner and Marla Blank had spoken about, this can get to some of those just accessing to our properties and our transit centers. So this was done separately, but I think there's a new intersection, a broader piece that we can actually then take back to the municipalities for a whole palette of new types of grants or existing grants. So we're just doubling down on the reason why. And that's why I have a strange way of looking at it. I think that would, unless there's other comments, Mr. Board President, that would conclude the briefing.
Brief comment.
Please.
Just a brief one. And this work is sorely needed. And then not just the work of laying this out, but of course, the efforts required to connect the pedestrian access to all of the incredible assets that we have as an agency. I know that in Southeast and East Portland, and then in, of course, the four cities out here in my district, we've got some areas where historically they have been more rural, and now we've moved them into the urban setting. And there are 5 or 6 specific areas where we absolutely need to do this work. And I'll commit in my new role to ensure that I'm working with TriMet and our folks in city are working with TriMet to ensure that we get these things in place, because critical. I know of a couple of places where it's a significant safety issue just trying to get to our assets. So we don't really get the opportunity, and the riders don't really get the opportunity to utilize the assets that and the benefits that we can offer if they can't safely get there. So huge support for this. And again, I look forward to working with TriMet in my new role.
Sounds like we got our first joint venture with the city of Gresham again.
Yeah, I was looking where all those purple lines are out there in the Gresham area. That's good. So I want to say, Eve, Bernie, this is a good piece of work. I think this will help inform prioritization of funds for pedestrian and bike projects around the region, and I think this data will be very, very helpful. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Can I just make a quick comment to just piggyback? Sorry. Eve, thank you again for this amazing work. This is incredible, and I think this is just going to be a really useful tool for everyone. I just was going to try to also maybe make the connection between, again, all of the content of pedestrian safety and the earlier report that we received around the TriMet, the crash advisory work. I don't know if there's some information, again, that could be sort of passed through between both of these efforts that are happening in our agency. And I really, really, really appreciate Linda's comments and her involvement in that committee and giving a really detailed update to us. But I'm just trying to make the connection so that we can have as many less silos as possible when we're thinking about safety and particularly around this new development for the agency. So just wanted to make that comment.
Good comment.
Thank you.
Any other comments? I'm sorry. I think we're trying to help everybody get out of here. I'm not hearing anything. So again, I want to say thank you for everybody for hanging in there. Congratulations to Travis and Bernie again. And just noting here on the screen is our next board meeting is on January 27th, 2021. If you can believe that. Hopefully 2021 is a little better year than the one we've been in. So thank you all. Have a great holiday. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year and all that. And we'll look forward to seeing you next year.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you all. Be safe.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.